It's because you can't get pregnant. That's what my husband said, blaming me for his affair and asking for a divorce. I was furious. He thought everything would be settled with the divorce, but he was mistaken. The real drama starts now. My name is Susan. I'm 43 and divorced a few months ago. My ex-husband, David, is 48 and we didn't have any children. Sadly, the reason was on my end, but the original cause was partly David's fault too. We married when I was 33, already close to the age for high-risk pregnancy. I wanted to start trying for a baby as soon as possible. I went to the gynecologist to make sure there were no issues with my health. Unfortunately, David got a big project at work, making it impossible to try for a baby. He was assigned to set up a new branch office in another state and had to stay there during the week, only returning home on weekends. David asked me, "I'll try to come home on weekends, but if we have a kid, you'll be mostly on your own. Are you okay with that?" Not feeling confident about managing alone, I hesitated to answer. We couldn't count on help from our families either, as they lived far away. Believing David's words that he might return in a year, I gave up on trying for a baby for the time being. But his assignment ended up lasting 3 years. When he finally returned, we eagerly started trying to conceive, but with no success. A re-examination at the hospital revealed that my ovarian function had declined, likely due to aging. Though there were options like hormone therapy, the chances of pregnancy were slim. I was devastated but knew it wasn't David's fault. He apologized repeatedly. I suggested that we keep trying naturally and enjoy life, just the two of us, and he agreed. However, David's attitude began to change over time. Seeing families out together, he would say enviously, "That must be nice, the perfect family picture." His words also grew harsher. "There are several single mothers at my work who manage despite everything. They get support from the government. You should have just gone for it," he would say, indirectly criticizing my reluctance. Certainly, such women are increasing, and I respect them very much, but I didn't have the confidence to do it myself. Was it my fault? After about 5 years of tension, David suddenly asked, "What do you think about adoption?" "Adoption? That's out of the blue," I replied. "Well, I know a girl who got pregnant before marriage. Why don't we adopt her baby?" he suggested. Stunned by his bizarre proposal, I was silent until he explained, "I just really want a child." When I heard that girl got pregnant, it immediately came to mind. Adoption, huh? I hadn't considered that, I thought. But something about what he said nagged at me. A girl? An acquaintance? I'd understand if it was a relative, but what does he mean by a young girl acquaintance? Trying to sound casual, I asked, "Oh, so she's young." He replied, "She's just 24, a beautiful girl, so the baby inside her is sure to be healthy and attractive too." Could she be someone from his office? But would a woman in her early 20s discuss such a personal matter with a male boss over 45? Or could she be his mistress? That's when I first suspected he might be cheating. Observing him, I noticed several suspicious behaviors. He was constantly glued to his cell phone, coming home late, wearing underwear I hadn't bought, and faint traces of sweet perfume. But what really convinced me was him skipping our anniversary. We didn't have a wedding ceremony due to our jobs, but we registered our marriage on December 24th, Christmas Eve, and always celebrated it as our anniversary and Christmas. Yet this year, he chose a work party over our tradition. I believed his words that he would come home early and waited alone with the Christmas tree decorated, a cake and Christmas dinner prepared, and a gift for him. It was heartbreaking to wait alone. No response to my numerous calls, he finally contacted me the next morning. His voice sounded too cheerful as he said, Sorry, I accidentally overslept at a friend's place." I replied, "Okay, I get it. I threw away the cake, Christmas dinner, and your present." He casually responded, "Oh, what a waste. No need to sulk just because I missed our anniversary. I'll make it up to you." I retorted, "No, it's fine. You might as well not come back home. Why not live with the person you were with last night?" He seemed to be still intoxicated or lost in the memories of last night, saying, "Hey, don't say that. Besides, her apartment is small," unknowingly digging his own grave. "I'm going home early tonight, Susan. Forgive me." The old man apologized to me in a brusque tone, which made me want to vomit. That evening, my husband came home with a face as if nothing had happened and again began talking about the adoption. "Let's start the process soon. She wants to decide quickly." I asked, "Why are you so eager to adopt a stranger's child? What about her partner or parents? Can I talk to her or her parents first?" He became flustered and stammered, "That's because Ah, right, the guy ran away. And apparently, she has no parents. I decided to test him. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in raising a child born from a reckless woman and a foolish man, I said. He blurted out in anger, What? You're insulting me and Sarah. There, he fell right into my trap. Realizing his affair was exposed, he finally understood. You could have just asked for a divorce, but making me raise your and this Sarah girl's child? That's called cunning. Apparently, Sarah, unable to raise a child but still wanting to give birth, had convinced him of this plan. He said, It's your fault for not being able to have kids. You should be grateful I'm letting you raise my child. That was it. I snapped and said clearly, Then let's go to court and see who's right. He lost his temper too. Fine. I don't want to see your face again. Divorce? Get out. Hearing that, I placed the divorce papers I had received earlier in front of him. Caught off guard, he signed them, unable to back down. I didn't want to spend another second with him. I gathered my essentials, filed the papers, and went back to my parents' house. A week later, he called me. Your stuff is still here. Pack it up and get out. Take everything. I informed him I'd come with my lawyer over the weekend. Shocked by the mention of a lawyer, he reluctantly agreed. When I threatened to go to his office unless we settled on alimony and property division, we eventually agreed on a settlement of $150,000 in total. But the next day, on my way back from a part-time job, a young woman approached me. It was the infamous Sarah. She was David's type, short with long hair and cute, but her heavy makeup made her look tacky. I can't pay it all at once, she yelled in a shrill voice as soon as she opened her mouth. It's none of your business. David agreed to pay in front of the lawyer, I replied. He actually hesitated, but he didn't want to deal with me any longer and eventually gave in. Why did you call me there? She demanded. That's something you should ask David, I said, unimpressed. Rest, she mumbled. I thought we could just ditch the alimony sneakily. So she planned to make partial payments and then disappear by moving or changing jobs. Well, sorry for you, but you can live in that house, right? I remarked. That's David's house, isn't it? What about the mortgage? She asked. It's in David's name, and the mortgage is fully paid off, I informed her. Well, I guess that's okay then, she said, backing off with a tone that suggested she was up to something. I think she is up to something, but whatever it wasn't my concern anymore. 2 years later, David contacted me. Please lend me some money, he begged. What? I asked in disbelief. Those two are spending like crazy, he exclaimed. Apparently, Sarah's mother had conveniently moved up to the city and was staying in that house. According to Sarah, David wanted a child, so I gave birth, but I never said I'd raise it. Once she realized she couldn't pawn the child off on me, she said, Raising a child is hard, so I'm calling Mom, and brought her mother from the countryside. David initially welcomed her, thinking she'd help with the childcare, but it turned out neither she nor Sarah was doing much parenting and instead spent their time frolicking. Well, knowing her mom, that figures, I said, unimpressed. Then David, who still seems to like Sarah, suddenly yelled at me. Don't insult Sarah, he suddenly yelled at me. She agreed to marry an old man like me and even had my child. It's all your fault for not being able to have kids, he accused, bringing up the past. Okay, I can't argue with that, but can I say something? I asked. What now? He grumbled. Remember when I went for a fertility check 3 years ago? You were tested too, remember? I reminded him. Yeah, I guess, he recalled. I went to hear the results alone. Actually, they said you had issues too, I revealed. What? He gasped in shock. The gynecologist had mentioned that for his age, David's sperm quality was quite poor, making pregnancy unlikely even if I had no issues. I had learned of my problems first, so I assumed I was the main cause and didn't want to hurt him by revealing his results. That can't be. Sarah got pregnant, he argued in denial. Whether it's your child or not, I don't know, I said, silencing him. His reaction suggested he might have had doubts himself. I rubbed salt in his wound. Even if a DNA test proves it's not your child, it might not change anything. What do you mean? He asked, confused. The child is over a year old, right? I pointed out. So what? He pressed. Current law doesn't recognize paternity disavowal suits filed after a year since birth. I explained. If discovered after a year, a different lawsuit is needed, often leading to disputes. Even if a DNA test proves no biological relation, there's a chance of losing the case. Why? The test clearly shows it's not my biological child, he protested. Well, there's a Supreme Court ruling. Even after divorce, the man had to pay child support. I explained thoroughly. Hearing this, David just muttered, "It can't be, it's not true," in a trembling voice. Sorry for your troubles. According to neighbors, those two, or rather three, are constantly battling every day. It's unclear if the child is David's or not. We're getting divorced. Get out. Sell this house and pay child support. I'm never leaving. You get out. Such arguments are heard daily, and they're reportedly quite intense. They've had the police called on them multiple times, and both women have even been detained. As for me, I'm currently living with my parents. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm enjoying my single life, keeping busy with work and hobbies. Hi, I'm Emily. Before we dive into my story, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more real-life tales. Now let's get into it. I met Jack at the office 7 years ago. While I grew up in a modest household where we celebrated every small achievement because it meant so much, Jack came from a world of wealth and privilege, where luxury was taken for granted. Our worlds collided on a typical Monday morning during a meeting, and despite our differences, we clicked instantly. Jack was unlike any guy I had ever known. His genuine kindness and ability to make everyone feel important drew me to him. But things were more complicated when it came to his family. His mother, always impeccably dressed in designer outfits, and his sister Lisa, who mirrored her mother's every attitude, saw me as a reminder of Jack's departure from their high-class norms. Really, Jack? You could date anyone and you choose someone from, where did you say you were from again, dear? His mother would ask, her voice dripping with disdain, her eyes full of judgment. But Jack was always in my corner. It doesn't matter where she's from, Mom. Emily is amazing, he would defend, squeezing my hand under the table during every family dinner that felt more like a tribunal. Lisa's jealousy was impossible to ignore. Must be nice, snagging a rich guy to solve all your problems, she'd sneer when we were alone, making me question my place in Jack's world. Despite the chilly reception from his family, our relationship flourished. Jack proposed, and I said yes, dreaming of a future where love would eventually soften his family's harsh edges. But as our wedding day approached, their condescension turned into attempts to sabotage our happiness. I just don't see what you see in her, Jack, Lisa would argue, trying to plant seeds of doubt. She's clearly not one of us. But Jack would always reassure me later, away from their prying eyes. Don't listen to them. I love you for who you are, not where you come from. The day I found out I was pregnant was pure joy. Jack and I had been hoping for this news, and seeing that positive test, we couldn't wait to share it. We decided to announce it at a family dinner, hoping it would be a moment of celebration that might bring everyone together. As dishes passed and conversation flowed, Jack squeezed my hand under the table, a silent signal that it was time. Clearing his throat, he stood up, the clinking of his glass calling for silence. Family, I have some wonderful news. Emily and I are expecting our first child. The reaction was mixed, with some offering congratulations and others stunned into silence. But Lisa's face was marked by unmistakable resentment. Her tight-lipped smile never reached her eyes, and her words were tinged with bitterness. It must be nice being able to have kids, Lisa muttered under her breath, her voice barely a whisper but heavy with pain. Some of us aren't so lucky. I reached out, touching her arm gently. Lisa, hi. She jerked away. You wouldn't understand, Emily. This should have been me. Her words stung, but I knew her struggle with infertility was a sensitive topic. I had hoped our news would bring her some joy, but it seemed to only deepen her despair. The tension from that dinner lingered, and a few weeks later, during my baby shower, it reached a boiling point. Hidden behind a row of beautifully wrapped gifts, I overheard a conversation that chilled me to the bone. Just think about it, Jack. It could be a solution for everyone. His mother whispered, her voice low and conspiratorial. But Mom, it's our baby. Jack's protest was weak, his tone filled with conflict. Lisa needs this, Jack. It would solve so many problems. You and Emily can always have another child. My heart pounded in my chest as the reality of their words sank in. They were discussing giving my baby to Lisa. Tears blurred my vision as the betrayal cut deep. How could they even think about this? How could Jack? I stayed hidden until their conversation moved on to other trivialities, my mind racing. The rest of the shower passed in a haze. I smiled and thanked guests, all while my thoughts spiraled out of control. That night, I confronted Jack, but it didn't go as I had hoped. As soon as I brought up what I had overheard, he tried to downplay everything, insisting it was just a hypothetical discussion, not something they were seriously considering. It was just a conversation, Emily. We weren't actually planning to go through with it, Jack explained, his voice a mix of frustration and desperation. How can you even discuss our baby like that? How can you not see how wrong that is? My voice cracked, the hurt too raw, too deep to contain. Jack sighed, running his hands through his hair, a sign of his stress. I know it sounds bad, but you have to understand my position. Lisa has been struggling, and Mom, she just wants to fix things. By giving away our child? I shot back, incredulous. Does my opinion not matter? Am I just an incubator to your family? Jack paused, his expression pained. Of course not. You know I love you. It was just a suggestion. We wouldn't have done anything without your agreement. But the damage was done. The trust I had in Jack, in us, had been shattered. How could I believe in his promises when, behind closed doors, they were contemplating such a betrayal? I felt more alone than ever. The man I loved, the family I had tried so hard to be a part of, had let me down in the most unimaginable way. The realization that I was nothing more than an outsider to them, someone to be used for their own ends, was devastating. The nights that followed were sleepless, filled with tears and the echoing words of their conversation. During the days, I moved through my routines mechanically, each action a reminder of the facade my life with Jack had become. Jack tried to make amends, his apologies filling the space between us with more words but no comfort. Emily, please, let's talk about this. We can sort this out, he pleaded, his texts and calls becoming more frequent as I pulled away. But there was nothing left to sort out. The betrayal had cut too deep, the wound too raw and festering with each passing day. The home we had built together felt like a trap, lined with the echoes of whispered plans and broken trust. In the silence of our bedroom, staring at the shadows dancing across the ceiling, I made my decision. I couldn't stay, not with the weight of betrayal hanging over me, not with the constant reminder of what they had intended for my child. I needed to leave, to find a safe haven where my baby and I could start anew, free from the toxic ties that bound us to Jack and his family's manipulative schemes. With my decision made, the planning began in earnest. I reached out to my best friend Anna, who had always been my rock. I need to get out, Anna. I can't stay here. It's not safe for me or the baby. We'll figure this out, Emily. Let's plan carefully, Hannah responded immediately, her voice calm and resolute. Together, we crafted a meticulous plan designed to ensure my departure went unnoticed until it was too late to stop me. The urgency of the situation lent a surreal quality to the preparations. While Jack was at work, I packed each piece of clothing, every cherished photograph and essential baby items, quietly stowing them away in suitcases and boxes. Anna helped, her presence a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone. Make sure you take all the important documents, birth certificates, your passport, anything you might need, Anna advised as she checked off items from our list. Her practicality anchored me, keeping the waves of emotion at bay long enough to focus on what needed to be done. The emotional weight of leaving my life behind was overwhelming. Each drawer emptied, each memory packed away, felt like erasing parts of a past that once held so much promise. But with each item packed, my resolve strengthened. This was for my child, for our future, free from manipulation and deceit. By the time Jack returned home, the house looked as it usually did, but the essence of my presence was gone. The finality hit me as I zipped up the last suitcase. Ready? Anna asked, handing me a travel mug of coffee for the road. As I'll ever be, I replied, taking a deep breath as we loaded the car. The drive away from the house was a mix of fear and relief. I watched in the rearview mirror as my former life faded into the distance, a chapter closed with a silent vow to never look back. We drove to a small apartment Anna had arranged for me in a different city. It was modest but safe, a temporary sanctuary where I could gather my thoughts and plan the next steps. As I settled into my new apartment, the reality of my situation began to sink in. For the first time in years, I was truly on my own, starting over. The path ahead felt daunting, but the thought of my baby safe and sound in my womb gave me the courage to face whatever lay ahead. With the door of my new apartment firmly closed behind me and the sounds of a busy city outside, I felt the first stirrings of peace. Here, in this anonymous setting, I could rebuild, redefine, and reclaim my life on my own terms. The divorce proceedings were grueling. My lawyer presented the case, detailing Jack's family's intentions for my baby. The courtroom felt oppressively silent as Jack sat across the aisle, his expression a mix of regret and disbelief as his own texts and conversations with his mother were laid bare before the judge. It is evident that there was a plan to manipulate the custody of the child to benefit Mr. Jack's last name, sister against the wishes of the mother, my lawyer stated firmly, her voice echoing in the tense courtroom. Jack's lawyer attempted to downplay the situation, suggesting misunderstandings and family pressures, but the evidence was irrefutable. When the judge finally ruled, Jack was denied any form of custody, granting me full rights. It was a bittersweet victory, necessary yet heart-wrenching, knowing that it stemmed from such profound betrayal. Following the proceedings, I secured a restraining order against Jack's family. The relief that came with the court's protection was palpable. I was free, legally and emotionally, from the people who had tried to undermine my role as a mother. Now, in a new city, I focused on building a life for my child and me. Anna was instrumental during this time, helping me find a community of supportive friends and connecting me with local groups for single mothers. Her unwavering support was a constant reminder of the goodness in people, a stark contrast to the manipulations I had left behind. I settled into a routine, filling my days with preparations for the baby's arrival. Decorating the nursery became a project that brought me joy and anticipation. I chose soft, neutral colors and comfortable furnishings, creating a sanctuary for my new beginning. The support network I built was invaluable. They offered not just practical help, but emotional sustenance. We shared stories, advice, and many meals, creating bonds that felt more like family than some of my own blood relations had been. As I walked through the local park, pushing a stroller with my sleeping baby, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The trees were lush and the path familiar, each step a testament to my resilience. I had made it through the storm, and here I was on the other side, my baby giggling at the sight of fluttering leaves. This new life was hard-earned but profoundly fulfilling. As I looked down at my child, I knew that every decision, every difficult step taken, was worth it. Here, in this quiet, simple life, I found my closure and my joy. I had not only survived, but I had also thrived, proving to myself that no matter the challenge, I could build a future of hope and love for my child, free from the shadows of the past. And that brings us to the end of Emily's story. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about the idea of family obligations versus individual rights? Should family always have a say in personal decisions, or is there a line that shouldn't be crossed? Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if you found Emily's story compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more discussions like this. Your engagement helps us keep sharing these real-life stories. Hi, I'm Amelia Parker, and this is the story of how I stood up to my controlling family and found my own path. I'm 22, about to graduate from Boston University with honors. On paper, I'm what you'd call the golden child of my family. It sounds great, right? But in reality, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Amelia, darling, straighten your posture. A Parker always stands tall. My grandmother Victoria's sharp voice echoes through the grand hall as I walk into the family mansion. Sometimes I swear she has eyes in the back of her head. Yes, grandmother, I reply, forcing a smile. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but my grandmother, she's a force of nature. My dad, Robert, gives me a sympathetic look. Mother, Amelia's posture is fine. She's not attending a debutante ball, he says, trying to soften the situation. Robert, please. Grandmother snaps. I'm merely ensuring our family's reputation remains intact. I exchange a glance with my mom, Elizabeth. She gives me a small, reassuring nod, silently telling me to stand my ground. But with grandmother Victoria, that's easier said than done. Later that evening, I'm in my room texting my secret boyfriend, James. You won't believe what my grandmother said today, I type. Let me guess, something about the Parker family reputation. James replies, and I can't help but chuckle. Bingo. Sometimes I think she has that phrase trademarked, I text back. Well, my grandmother Margaret had some choice words about the Parkers today too. When will this feud end? He responds. I sigh, flopping back onto my bed. James and I have been dating for months, but we've had to keep it a secret. His grandmother, Margaret Thompson, is my grandmother's archrival. It's like Romeo and Juliet, but with more Gucci and less Shakespeare. Amelia, come down for dinner. My mom calls from downstairs. I quickly delete my conversation with James and head to the dining room, where the usual Parker family drama unfolds. Did you hear about Margaret Thompson's latest charity event? Grandmother Victoria scoffs, as if throwing money around makes up for her lack of class. I bite my tongue, resisting the urge to defend James's family. Instead, I focus on my plate, pushing around my organic kale salad. Now, Amelia, grandmother turns her attention to me. Have you given any thought to which law firm you'll be interning at this summer? I've spoken to Judge Harrison. He's more than willing to put in a good word for you at his son's firm. Actually, grandmother, I start gathering my courage. I've been thinking about taking a different path after graduation, maybe exploring nonprofit work. The silence that follows is deafening, as if I just announced I was running away to join the circus. Nonprofit? Grandmother's voice is dangerously low. Amelia dear, Parker's dubbed a nonprofit. We lead. We succeed. We dominate. I can feel my resolve wavering under her steely gaze. But then I think of James, of the life I want for myself, not the one that's been mapped out for me since birth. I understand, grandmother, I say, my voice steady. But I believe there are many ways to lead and succeed. I'd like the chance to find my own path. The tension in the room is palpable. My parents exchange worried glances, caught between supporting me and avoiding grandmother's wrath. As I go to bed that night, my mind is racing. I know I'm walking a fine line between the life that's expected of me and the one I truly want. But for the first time, I feel ready to stand up for myself, no matter the consequences. The next day, the Parker mansion is buzzing with activity, champagne flowing freely as Boston's elite mingle. I stand in the center, forcing a smile as yet another of grandmother's friends congratulates me on my graduation. Amelia, darling, come here for a moment. Grandmother Victoria calls, waving me over to a group of distinguished-looking men in suits. I excuse myself and walk over, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Yes, grandmother. Gentlemen, this is my granddaughter, Amelia. She's just graduated summa cum laude from Boston University, she boasts. Impressive, one of the men nods. Following in your grandmother's footsteps, I see. Victoria has always been a force to be reckoned with in the business world. I smile politely, but inside, I know I'm no longer walking in her shadow. I'm carving out my own path. Inside, I was screaming. This wasn't me. This wasn't what I wanted. As I looked at my grandmother's smug face, something inside me snapped. Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I have an announcement to make. Grandmother's eyes narrowed. Amelia, what are you? But I was already stepping away, moving toward the center of the room. I caught James's eye across the crowd, and he gave me a subtle, encouraging nod. Everyone, may I have your attention, please? I called out. Slowly, the chatter died down, and all eyes turned to me. My heart pounded, but I took a deep breath. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my graduation. But there's something else I'd like to celebrate tonight. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Grandmother Victoria pushing through the crowd, her face a mixture of confusion and growing fury. But I pressed on. I'm engaged, I announced, my voice ringing clear and strong, to James Thompson. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, almost on cue, James stepped forward, taking my hand. It's true, he said, smiling warmly at me. We're in love. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. I could hear fragments of conversations. Thompson, as in Margaret Thompson's grandson. But the feud. How long has this been going on? But all I could focus on was my grandmother. Her face was twisted in a rage unlike anything I'd ever seen. She pushed through the last few people standing in her way, and suddenly she was right in front of me. How dare you, she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. How dare you embarrass me like this? Grandmother, I didn't get to finish. Without warning, her hand lashed out, striking me across the face so hard I stumbled back. The world spun, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, James cradling my head in his lap. The room was chaos. People shouting, some leaving, and my parents desperately trying to calm things down. Amelia, can you hear me? James' worried face swam into focus. What? What happened? I mumbled, trying to sit up. Your grandmother hit you, James said, his voice tight with concern. You've been out for a few minutes. We're taking you to the hospital. I nodded weakly, wincing at the pain in my head. As James and my father helped me to my feet, I saw my grandmother standing off to the side, her face cold and indifferent. Mother, how could you? My father said, his voice trembling with fury. She's your granddaughter. She made her choice, grandmother replied, her tone icy. She's no granddaughter of mine. Those words cut deeper than the slap. As they led me to the waiting ambulance, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the price of standing up for myself? And if it was I ready to pay it? I woke up in a sterile hospital room, the scent of disinfectant thick in the air and the soft peeping of machines nearby. My head was pounding, and for a moment, I couldn't remember why I was there. Then it all came flooding back, the party, the announcement, grandmother's fury. Amelia, you're awake. James's voice was filled with relief. He was sitting by my bedside, dark circles under his eyes. What happened? I croaked, my throat dry. You've been out for a day, my mom said, stepping into the room. The doctor said you have a mild concussion. I tried to sit up, wincing from the pain. Has grandmother been here? The silence that followed was answer enough. Actually, my dad said, his voice tight with anger. She's been busy trying to control the narrative. It's all over the local news. James handed me his phone, and I scrolled through the headlines. Boston socialite assaults granddaughter at graduation party. Parker family feud erupts in violence. Engagement announcement leads to hospital visit. Oh God, I whispered, feeling sick. That's not all, James said, his jaw clenched. Your grandmother tried to bribe me to leave you. She offered me an obscene amount of money to forget this foolishness and leave you alone. I felt like I'd been slapped all over again. She what? She also threatened to cut you off financially if you don't come to your senses, my mom added, her voice bitter. In that moment, something inside me hardened. For years, I'd made excuses for my grandmother's behavior, always believing there was love beneath her harsh exterior. But now, I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, controlling woman who cared more about her image than her family. I'm done, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm done letting her control my life. Over the next few weeks, as I recovered, I put my plan into action. I moved out of the family home, ignoring grandmother's threats and guilt trips. I accepted a job offer in New York City with a nonprofit organization I'd been too afraid to consider before. It wasn't easy, but I was finally free. Maybe I should see someone, I admitted to James one night after waking up from yet another nightmare. I think that's a great idea, he said gently. I'll go with you if you want. True to his word, James was there for every therapy session, every panic attack, every moment of doubt. Despite grandmother's continued attempts to drive a wedge between us, including a thinly veiled threat to his family's business, James stood by me. Meanwhile, grandmother Victoria's carefully constructed world was unraveling. I heard through the grapevine that several of her business partners had distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with someone who would assault their own granddaughter. Did you see the latest? James asked one evening, showing me his phone. It was a video of grandmother being confronted by reporters outside her office. Mrs. Parker, do you have any comment on the assault allegations? Is it true you tried to bribe your granddaughter's fiancé? How do you respond to claims that you're using your influence to suppress the story? Grandmother's face was a mask of barely controlled fury as she pushed past the reporters, refusing to answer any questions. Karma's a bitch, I muttered, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sadness. That chapter of my life was over. 2 years flew by in New York. James and I got married in a small ceremony, far from the Boston society pages. We were happy, building our lives on our own terms. Then came an invitation to a charity gala in Boston. I hesitated, but James squeezed my hand. We can handle it, he said. We're not the same people we were 2 years ago. Walking into the ballroom, I felt eyes on us, whispers following in our wake. Then I saw her, grandmother Victoria, standing alone by the bar. She looked smaller somehow, less intimidating. As our eyes met, she made her way over. Amelia, she said, her voice lacking its usual commanding tone. I'm glad you came. Grandmother, I replied coolly. She glanced around nervously. I was hoping we could talk. I want to apologize for what happened. I reacted poorly, and I'm sorry. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, an apology from Victoria Parker. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw no real remorse, just desperation. I appreciate the sentiment, I said, but I'm afraid it's too little, too late. Victoria's face fell. But we're family. Surely we can move past this. Some actions are unforgivable. Grandmother, I said firmly. You showed me who you really are that night, and I believe you. As we talked, I learned the extent of what had happened since that fateful night. Victoria's company had lost major contracts, faced multiple lawsuits from former employees alleging years of abuse, and her social circle had abandoned her. Many sided with Margaret Thompson in their long-standing rivalry. I've lost everything, she said, a hint of her old anger creeping into her voice. And for what? Because you couldn't follow the plan I had for you. There it was, the mask slipping, revealing the same old Victoria beneath. No, grandmother, I said, my voice steady. You lost everything because of your own actions, your cruelty, your need for control, your refusal to see others as anything but pawns in your game. Those were your choices. Now you're facing the consequences. I've moved on, I told her. I'm happy, successful, and surrounded by people who truly care about me. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Victoria Parker standing alone, a relic of a world that no longer existed. The story's over. Do you think there's ever a point where family toxicity becomes unforgivable? At what moment in the story would you have cut ties with Victoria, or would you have given her another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and perspectives could help others dealing with similar situations. Hey everyone, I'm Olivia Sanders, and today I want to share how I handled some seriously toxic people in my life. I'm 25, an aspiring artist, and I never imagined I'd be telling you about the time my own grandmother tried to scald me with boiling water. But here we are. It all started 2 years ago when my mom, Sarah, passed away. She was my best friend, my biggest supporter, and losing her felt like someone ripped a part of my soul out. The only thing that kept me going was the beautiful collection of jewelry she left behind. Each piece told a story. After her death, I stayed in our family home with my grandmother, Martha. At first, it was comforting, like having a piece of mom still around. But things started to get strange when Frank entered the picture. Olivia, dear, have you met Frank? He's such a gentleman, Grandma asked me one day. I forced a smile. Nice to meet you. Frank, this charming 60-year-old widower, began visiting more frequently. I tried to be happy for Grandma, but something didn't feel right. My best friend, Zoe, noticed it too. One day over coffee, she said, Liv, don't you think it's time you got your own place? Your grandma's acting like a teenager with this Frank guy. I sighed, I know, but I can't just leave her. Plus, all of Mom's stuff is still there. Zoe gave me a knowing look. Your mom would want you to live your life, not babysit your grandma. She had a point, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to stay. Work became my escape. I was doing graphic design at a small firm, trying to save up for art supplies. That's where I met Ethan. Hey Olivia, check out this design I'm working on, Ethan called me over one day. As I leaned in, catching a hint of his cologne, I smiled. Wow, that's amazing. I wish I could create like that. He grinned. You're kidding, right? Your work is incredible. You should really consider doing your own art full-time. I blushed, feeling butterflies in my stomach. Ethan understood me. He saw the artist in me struggling to break free. But every time I felt like I was moving forward, something at home would pull me back. Like the night I met Frank's son, Derek, at a family dinner. So Olivia? Derek asked, his eyes flicking between me and his dad. How long have Frank and your grandma known each other? I shrugged. A few months, I guess. Why? Derek's expression tightened. No reason. Just curious. Something about his tone unsettled me. But before I could ask more, Grandma Martha burst into the room. Everyone, I have wonderful news, she exclaimed, her face glowing with excitement. Frank and I are getting married. The room went silent. It felt like a punch to the gut. Married? Grandma? Isn't this a bit sudden? I asked, trying to hide my shock. She waved off my concern. Oh, pish-posh, when you know, you know. As everyone congratulated them, a heavy sense of dread settled over me. Something wasn't right, and I had no idea how bad it was about to get. This was just the beginning of a nightmare. In the weeks after Grandma's engagement announcement, everything spiraled out of control. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone, her voice tense and anxious. "I'll get the money, I promise. Just give me a little more time." When I confronted her about it, she snapped. "It's none of your business, Olivia. Can't an old woman have some privacy?" I backed off, but my suspicions only grew. Things got even stranger when I noticed Mom's antique locket was missing from its usual place on my dresser. "Grandma, have you seen Mom's locket?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She avoided my gaze. "Oh, that old thing. I probably moved it while cleaning. Don't worry about it." But I was worrying a lot. I called Zoe in a panic. "Zoe, I think Grandma's up to something shady. Mom's jewelry is disappearing, and she's being all secretive about money." "That doesn't sound good, Liv. Want me to do some digging?" Zoe asked. I hesitated. "Would you? I feel like I'm going crazy here." While Zoe played detective, I confided in Ethan during our lunch breaks. "I just don't know what to think anymore," I said, overwhelmed. Ethan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Hey, we'll figure this out. You're not alone in this." His touch sent a warm feeling through me, a brief respite from the chaos at home. But that peace didn't last. A few days later, Zoe called with disturbing news. "Liv, you might want to sit down for this. I found out your grandma's drowning in debt. And that Frank guy, he has a history of cozying up to wealthy widows and then disappearing with their money." My stomach dropped. "Oh God, Zoe, what do I do?" "We need solid proof. Keep your eyes open and document everything," she advised. For the next week, I was on high alert, watching Grandma's every move. The final straw came when I saw her sneaking out early one morning, a familiar jewelry box tucked under her arm. I followed her to a rundown pawn shop and watched in horror as she handed over piece after piece of Mom's jewelry. Unable to contain myself, I burst into the shop. "Grandma, what are you doing?" She whirled around, her face a mix of guilt and anger. "Olivia, you followed me? How could you?" "That's Mom's jewelry. It's all I have left of her," I shouted. The pawn shop owner awkwardly excused himself, leaving us alone in the cramped, cluttered space. Grandma's expression hardened. "You don't understand," she snapped. "Frank and I need the money for our new life together. Your mother would have wanted me to be happy. By selling her memories, by lying to me." I could barely speak, shaking with anger and disbelief. "You ungrateful child," she spat. "After everything I've done for you." I stepped closer. "Everything you've done? You mean stealing from me, lying to me, and planning to run off with some con artist?" Grandma's face contorted in fury. Before I could react, she grabbed a kettle of boiling water from a hot plate behind the counter and flung its contents at me. Searing pain exploded across my arm and shoulder, and I screamed, stumbling backward into a display case. The sound of shattering glass mixed with my cries of pain. Through the haze, I saw Grandma's face, no concern, no regret, just cold, hard anger. As I crumpled to the floor, cradling my burned arm, one thought became clear. The grandmother I knew and loved was gone. In her place was a stranger, someone who had just shattered the last thread of trust between us. The pawn shop owner rushed back in, shouting about calling an ambulance, but all I could focus on was Grandma, frantically gathering up the jewelry with trembling hands. In that moment, as the pain threatened to overwhelm me, I made a silent vow. This betrayal wouldn't break me. It would fuel me to reclaim my life and my mother's legacy, no matter the cost. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits, police reports, and tears. The burns on my arm and shoulder were healing, but the emotional scars ran deep. Zoe was my rock. "You're staying with me," she insisted, helping me pack up my things from Grandma's house. No arguments. I didn't have the energy to argue. As we loaded the last box into Zoe's car, Grandma Martha appeared at the doorway. "Olivia, please, can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling. I couldn't even look at her. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice." A few days later, I got a surprising call from Derek, Frank's son. "Olivia, it's Derek. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. There's something you need to know about my dad." We met at a coffee shop and Derek spilled everything. How Frank had a history of charming wealthy widows, draining their accounts and vanishing. "It's a pattern," Derek admitted, his eyes filled with shame. "I've tried to stop him before, but he always slips away. Maybe this time, with your help, we can finally put an end to it." I was hesitant. I'm not sure I can handle any more drama. But Zoe, ever the fighter, wouldn't let it go. We can't let them get away with this, Liv. We need a plan. Over the next week, we hatched a scheme. Derek would play along with Frank's wedding plans, pretending to support him. Meanwhile, we'd work with the pawn shop owner to set up a sting operation. I feel bad for ratting out your grandma, the pawn shop owner admitted when we approached him. But what she did to you, that ain't right, the pawn shop owner said as we finalized the plan. Ethan, meanwhile, was my rock. He came over after work, bringing food and offering a shoulder to cry on. But I found myself pulling away, the fear of being hurt again too overwhelming. One night, as we sat on Zoe's couch, Ethan reached for my hand. I flinched. Liv, talk to me, he pleaded. What's going on in that head of yours? I couldn't meet his eyes. I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't. Everyone I've trusted has betrayed me. My own grandmother tried to. My voice broke, unable to finish. Ethan's voice softened. I'm not them, Olivia. I would never hurt you like that. That's why I thought about Grandma too, I whispered. The hurt in his eyes was clear, but he didn't push. I understand, just know I'm here, okay? Whatever you need. The day of the sting operation arrived. We had set up hidden cameras in the pawn shop and wired Derek for sound. The plan was for him to bring Grandma Martha and Frank to the shop under the pretense of selling family heirlooms to fund the wedding. From my spot outside, I saw them enter, Grandma clutching her purse tightly, Frank's arm around her. Even from a distance, I could see the predatory glint in his eyes. As the door closed behind them, I took a deep breath. Whatever happened next would change everything. I just hoped we were ready for it. The day of reckoning came swiftly. I stood in the back of the crowded courthouse, my heart racing as the judge read out the verdict. Frank's smug smile disappeared as the word guilty echoed through the room. It was over. When I went back to Grandma's house to collect the last of my things, I saw her watching from the window. Our eyes met briefly before she quickly pulled the curtains closed. That was the last time I ever saw her. With a nightmare behind me, I threw myself into my art. All the pain, betrayal, and healing poured into my canvases. Ethan stood by me through it all. These are incredible, Liv, he said one night, studying my latest piece. You're turning your pain into something beautiful. I leaned into him, feeling safe for the first time in months. I couldn't have done it without you. Zoe, being the unstoppable force she is, helped me set up my own studio. This is just the beginning, she declared as we painted the walls. You're going to be huge, Liv. I can feel it. She was right. My first small exhibition sold out in a week. Then came a feature in a local art magazine. Before I knew it, galleries in the city were calling. On the night of my exhibition opening, I stood in awe, looking around at the vibrant crowd, my art on the walls, and Ethan beaming proudly from across the room. To new beginnings, I toasted. And to the family we choose, Zoe added with a smile. The pain of betrayal had forged me into something stronger, something unbreakable. As I raised my glass, I silently thanked the hardships that had led me here. They hadn't broken me, they had set me free. The story has come to an end, but now I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you ever forgive Martha for what she did? Is there a line that, once crossed, makes reconciliation impossible, even with family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and opinions matter, and they could help others who might be going through something similar. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything and helps us continue sharing these important stories. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey there, I'm Sarah Thompson, I began, a nervous smile tugging at my lips. I'm 35, a marketing executive, and happily married to my amazing husband, Mark. We've been together for 7 years, and life's been good, except for one thing. We've been trying to have a baby for what feels like forever. Sarah, honey, Mark's voice broke through the silence one evening, after yet another negative pregnancy test. Maybe we should think about adoption. I sighed, the familiar ache in my chest deepening. I know, but I'm just not ready to give up yet. There's still that new fertility clinic Dr. Roberts recommended. Mark wrapped his arms around me, his voice gentle. Whatever you want, babe. I'm with you all the way. That was Mark, always supportive, unlike my older brother, Eric, and as if on cue, the devil himself waltzed in without warning. Little sis, How's the baby making going? Eric's booming voice filled the living room as he made himself at home, uninvited, like always. I forced a smile. Eric, what a surprise, I replied, though it wasn't. We're still trying. He flopped down on the couch, helping himself to a beer from our fridge. You know, Mom and Dad aren't getting any younger. They're always talking about wanting grandkids. Thanks for the reminder, I muttered under my breath. Completely oblivious, Eric kept going. By the way, did you hear? They're thinking about revising their will, something about the family legacy. My ears perked up. Our parents, Richard and Eleanor Thompson, had built a successful real estate empire. I'd never cared much about the money, but Eric's tone made me uneasy. What do you mean, revising the will? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Eric shrugged, too casually. You know how they are, always planning for the future. Probably want to make sure their grandkids are taken care of. The way he emphasized grandkids made my skin crawl. I quickly changed the subject, but his words lingered long after he left. Later that week, I met up with my best friend Lisa for coffee. As soon as I walked into the cafe, she could tell something was off. Spill it, Sarah. What's going on? I recounted Eric's visit, along with the weird vibe I got from him. Lisa listened carefully, her brow furrowed. Sarah, I don't want to freak you out, but be careful around Eric. Something about this doesn't sit right with me. I know, I admitted, grateful for her concern. It's just, it feels like he sees me as some kind of competition. It's ridiculous. Trust your gut, honey. And remember, you've got people in your corner. Speaking of which, any news from the fertility clinic? A small smile crept onto my face. Actually, yeah, we're starting a new treatment next week. Fingers crossed. As I left the cafe, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Little did I know just how much. After years of trying, Mark and I were finally expecting. 5 months along, and I was walking on air. My baby bump was showing, and I felt like I was glowing from the inside out. You look radiant, sweetheart, Mom said as I walked into their mansion for a celebratory dinner. Dad stood beside her, beaming with pride. Thanks, Mom. I feel amazing. I rubbed my belly affectionately. The house was decorated for the occasion, streamers, balloons, the works. As I made my way upstairs to freshen up, I heard unsteady footsteps behind me. Well, if it isn't the golden child. Eric's slurred voice made me freeze. I turned to see him, disheveled and reeking of alcohol. Eric, are you drunk? I asked, heart racing as he stumbled closer. You think you're so clever, don't you? Getting knocked up just to secure your inheritance. What are you talking about? I backed away, panic rising. Don't play dumb. His words were sharp, venomous. I heard Mom and Dad talking about changing the will, all because you're popping out a brat. Anger surged through me. This baby isn't about money, Eric. How dare you? How dare I? He sneered, moving closer. How dare you manipulate our parents like this? You're being ridiculous, I said, trying to push past him. Let me through. That's when it happened. Eric's face twisted in rage, and before I could react, his hands shoved me hard. I felt myself falling, tumbling down the stairs as time seemed to slow. Step after step, my body hit hard. I heard screaming. Was that me? And then, darkness. I didn't know how long I was out. When I finally woke, I was in a hospital bed, machines beeping softly around me. My whole body ached, and panic set in as the memory of the fall rushed back. The baby, I croaked, my throat dry. Mark's face swam into view, relief flooding his features. Sarah, thank God. The baby's okay. You've been in a coma for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? My mind reeled. Everything felt foggy, but then it hit me. Eric, he pushed me. Mark's expression darkened. I know, but he's claiming it was an accident. Mark said, his voice tight with frustration. The police can't do anything without proof. Tears welled up in my eyes. But you believe me, right? Of course I do, Mark replied fiercely, squeezing my hand. We'll figure this out, I promise. As I lay there, trying to piece together the events of that night, I heard hushed voices just outside my hospital room. I strained to listen. No concrete evidence, a stern voice was saying. Without a witness or confession, our hands are tied. But surely the fall itself, my dad's voice, sounding more distressed than I'd ever heard, cut through. It could have been an accident, the first voice interrupted. I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson, but we need more to go on. I closed my eyes, a mix of fear and anger twisting in my gut. Eric had tried to kill me, tried to kill my baby, and he might actually get away with it. As I drifted into an uneasy sleep, one thought circled in my mind. I had to find a way to prove what Eric had done. Somehow, I had to make sure he faced justice. The next few days blurred together with doctors, tests, and worried faces surrounding me. I was beyond relieved that my baby had survived, but fear gnawed at me. The worst part was the blank space in my memory, like a black hole where that night should have been. Sarah, can I come in? Eric's voice at the door made my heart race. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. He looked awful, pale with dark circles under his eyes. I'm so sorry, he choked out. It was an accident, I swear. I never meant for you to fall. I wanted to scream, to accuse him, but the words wouldn't come. Maybe it was the medication, or maybe a part of me wanted to believe him. Okay, I heard myself say. Eric left and Mark entered, his face dark with a storm of emotions. Why did you forgive him? He demanded. I don't know, I whispered. I can't remember what happened, Mark. What if it really was an accident? Mark's expression softened. We'll figure this out, I promise. Days passed, and slowly, flashes of that night started creeping back into my mind. The argument at the top of the stairs, Eric's angry face, the sensation of being shoved. I called Lisa, desperate to talk to someone outside of the situation. It wasn't an accident, I told her, my voice trembling. I remember now, bits and pieces, he pushed me. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. That bastard, Lisa hissed. We need to prove it, Sarah. But how? It's my word against his. After a long pause, Lisa spoke, her voice low and determined. What if we set up a hidden camera? If he visits again, we might catch him saying something incriminating. It felt sneaky, but I was desperate. Let's do it. Lisa smuggled in a tiny camera disguised as a stuffed animal, and we positioned it carefully in my hospital room, hoping it would capture any future conversations with Eric. Meanwhile, Mark was taking matters into his own hands. He hired a private investigator, Jake, to dig into Eric's past. You're not going to believe what I found, Jake said during one of his updates. Your brother-in-law has a history of gambling debts. He's been making some shady business deals to cover them up. I felt sick. Anything else? Jake nodded grimly. He's been meeting with your family's lawyer, looking into ways to contest the will if it's changed in your favor. We need to be careful, Mark warned. Eric's clearly dangerous. We can't confront him without solid proof. I agreed, but inside I was seething. How could my own brother do this? The next day, as if summoned by my thoughts, Eric showed up again. This time, I was ready. The hidden camera was in place, and I steeled myself for whatever might happen. Hey sis, Eric greeted me, overly cheerful. How are you feeling? Better, I replied cautiously. Eric, we need to talk about what happened that night. His face changed instantly, a flicker of fear, maybe anger, before he quickly composed himself. I told you it was an accident. Why can't you just let it go? I took a deep breath. Because I'm starting to remember, Eric, and what I remember doesn't match what you're saying. His eyes darted nervously around the room, and I prayed he wouldn't notice the camera. You're confused, he said, his voice hardening. The doctor said you might have some false memories. Don't go making accusations you can't take back. I saw a glimpse of the real Eric then, the one who had shoved me down those stairs. I knew I was right. This was no accident, and I was more determined than ever to prove it. The day finally came when I was being discharged from the hospital. Eric had agreed to help me pack, not knowing it was all part of our plan. Mark, Lisa, and my parents were in the next room, listening in. The hidden camera was recording, and I was wired up. My heart pounded as Eric walked in, all smiles. Ready to go home, sis. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to come. Almost, but first we need to talk about what really happened that night, Eric, I said, my voice steady. His smile faltered. We've been over this. It was an accident. Was it? I pressed. Because I remember you pushing me. I remember you talking about the will. Eric's face darkened, and he stepped closer. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I challenged. I know about your gambling debts, Eric. I know you've been meeting with the family lawyer, looking for ways to contest the will. He moved closer, his voice low and dangerous. You better watch what you're saying. Or what? I shot back. You'll push me down the stairs again. Eric let out a bitter laugh. You know what? Fine. Yes, I pushed you. You and your perfect little family were about to ruin everything. Do you have any idea what it's like, always being second best? I felt a wave of nausea. So you tried to kill me? Your own sister? His eyes narrowed. I didn't mean to push you that hard, he snarled. But you just wouldn't shut up about the baby, about how happy Mom and Dad were. I couldn't take it anymore. Suddenly, the door burst open. Mark, Lisa, and my parents rushed in, their faces filled with horror and disbelief. How could you? Mom sobbed. Dad's voice was cold as ice. You're no son of mine. Get out. Eric's face paled as the realization hit him. You set me up, he hissed at me. No, Eric, I said, my voice steady. You did this to yourself. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind. The police were called, statements were taken, and Eric was arrested on the spot, charged with attempted murder of me and my unborn child. As the investigation deepened, more of his crimes surfaced. Fraud, embezzlement. It was like opening Pandora's box. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my recovery and preparing for my baby's arrival. My family rallied around me, showering me with love and support. Mom and Dad revised their will, cutting Eric out completely. But honestly, I didn't care about the money. All I wanted was for my family to be safe. Then the day came. I was in the delivery room, bringing my daughter into the world. As I held her for the first time, an overwhelming sense of love and protection washed over me. She's perfect, Mark whispered, tears in his eyes. A few days later, we were home, settling into our new life. Lisa came to visit, bringing news. It's over, she said. Eric's been sentenced to 15 years in prison. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, anger. Sarah, Mark asked softly, you okay? I turned to my husband, my best friend, and our beautiful daughter. Yeah, I said, smiling. I'm more than okay. As I rejoined my family, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. We'd been through hell and come out stronger. Now, with our little girl, a new chapter was beginning. The future was bright, and it was ours. Now, I have a question for you. If you were in Sarah's position, could you ever forgive Eric for his actions? Or do you believe some betrayals are truly unforgivable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help others dealing with toxic family dynamics. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories exploring family dynamics, resilience, and personal triumph. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful narratives. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to hear your opinions. Hey, I'm Jessica, a 28-year-old who's just been through a whirlwind of emotions. Let me tell you about a day that was supposed to be filled with joy, but turned into one of the most shocking moments of my life. It was a sunny afternoon, and the living room buzzed with excitement. Family and friends gathered as Tom and I prepared to share some big news. Laughter and chatter filled the air, and the decorations fluttered in the light breeze coming through the open windows. So everyone, Tom began with a wide grin. His arm wrapped around me. We're thrilled to announce, we're expecting a boy. Cheers erupted, glasses clinked, and warm congratulations enveloped us. I couldn't stop smiling, my hand resting on my belly as I felt a kick. Our little one already seemed to know the celebration was for him. But suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. I noticed Ryan, Tom's brother, stiffen across the room. His face, usually calm, twisted in barely concealed anger. Why does it have to be a boy? Ryan muttered, loud enough for those nearby, including me, to hear. His fists clenched at his sides. Ryan, what's wrong? I asked, a nervous chuckle escaping as I tried to ease the tension. It's just a baby, our baby. Just a baby that might take everything, Ryan snapped, stepping closer, his voice rising with each word. You think I don't see what this means? That boy will get everything, won't he? The business, the money, everything. Tom moved forward, protective. Calm down, Ryan. You're being ridiculous. He's just a baby, our first joy. But Ryan wasn't listening. His eyes, dark with fury, were locked on me. No, I won't let that happen. Before anyone could react, Ryan lunged. The room gasped as his hand struck my belly. The pain was sharp, more from the shock than the force. I stumbled backward into Tom's arms, the room erupting around us. What are you doing? Tom roared, holding me steady. Are you insane? Ryan stood there, breathing heavily, his hands still raised. Slowly, the reality of what he'd done sank in as the expressions around the room shifted from shock to disgust. I couldn't find my words. The sting of the hit lingered, but fear for my baby overwhelmed me. I need to go to the hospital, I whispered, the tears threatening to fall. Tom's face was grim as he nodded. We're leaving, now. As he guided me out, the last thing I saw was Ryan being held back by two uncles, his face a mix of anger and regret. The ride to the hospital was the longest of my life, every moment filled with dread until the doctors finally assured us the baby was fine. But something inside me had changed. The attack wasn't just a betrayal, it was a wake-up call. Sitting in that sterile hospital room, the joy of our earlier announcement was tainted by violence. Tom and I both knew things would never be the same. Ryan had crossed a line, one that couldn't be ignored. Are you sure you're ready to talk about this now? Tom's voice was soft as he sat beside me in the hospital corridor, his hand finding mine. I have to, Tom, before I lose my nerve. What if next time the baby isn't okay? My voice trembled, but my resolve was building. Okay, he said gently. I'm with you, whatever you need. Pulling out my phone, I dialed the non-emergency number for the local police. The line clicked. Police department, how can I help you? I need to report an assault. It happened about an hour ago, at a family event. My brother-in-law hit me. I'm pregnant. Are you in a safe location now? The dispatcher asked. Yes, I'm at the hospital. Understood. We'll send an officer to take your statement. Can you provide the hospital address? After giving the details, I hung up, the weight of my decision settling in. It was real now, officially reported. We'll need a restraining order too, Tom said, already scrolling through his phone. I don't want Ryan anywhere near you or the baby. Yeah, I agreed, the disbelief still clinging to me. I can't believe he'd go this far, all over inheritance. Tom shook his head. We've all seen him get heated over money. Tom's voice trails off, his anger palpable as we sit in a sterile hospital room. An officer arrives, a young woman with kind eyes. I'm Officer Martinez. I'm here to take your statement, she says, pulling out a notepad. As I recount the events, Officer Martinez listens intently, her pen scratching across the paper. Tom interjects occasionally, his tone sharp with barely suppressed anger. Once I finish, she closes her notebook and nods. We'll handle it from here. We might need you to come in to provide further details or formally identify him if it goes to court. Thank you, officer. We'd appreciate it, Tom says, his voice calmer now. After the officer leaves, Tom and I head to another part of the hospital to file for a temporary restraining order. The process is bureaucratic, filled with paperwork and signatures, such a stark contrast to the emotional storm swirling inside me. Once this is filed, he'll be served by tomorrow. He won't be able to come near you or contact you, the clerk explains as we hand in the completed forms. Walking back to the car, the air feels heavier, as if every step is both a retreat from danger and a step into an uncertain future. You think he'll fight it? I murmur, watching the sunset paint the sky a bruised purple. He might, Tom replies, squeezing my hand, but we'll be ready. We have to protect our little guy. As we drive home, the silence isn't empty. It's thick with the weight of decisions made. It's the beginning of a battle we never wanted to fight. But when Tom reaches over to squeeze my hand again, I feel strength, ours together. A few days later, over coffee, Aunt Linda sits across from me, her eyes pleading. Can't you just let it go for the family's sake? It was a one-time thing. He didn't mean it. I look at her, incredulous. This wasn't just a minor slip-up, Linda. He attacked me. Well, I'm pregnant. What if he does it again? What if next time the baby isn't unharmed? But he's family, she insists. Family sticks together, right? Sticking together doesn't mean allowing abuse to go unchecked. The divide within the family grows as the case moves forward. Uncle Joe, firm over the phone, stands by me. He needs to learn, Jess. What Ryan did is inexcusable. You're doing the right thing. It's just hard, you know, being the one to stir things up. It's not stirring things up to demand justice, Joe reminds me. Meetings with lawyers and endless paperwork consume our days. Our attorney, Mr. Evans, is a seasoned man with a no-nonsense attitude. They might try to paint Ryan as a victim of momentary anger, Be prepared for that. How you respond in court will be crucial. Will they drag my past into this? Try to make me look bad? I ask, anxiety gnawing at my stomach. It's possible, Mr. Evans says, but stick to the facts. Your emotional response is powerful, but your calm recollection of events will carry more weight. The day of the trial, the courtroom is tense. Ryan sits across from me, composed but cold. The sight of him still sends a shiver down my spine. When I take the stand, the prosecutor starts. Can you tell us what happened on the day in question? I recount the events, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. The murmurs in the courtroom fade as I focus on the weight of my story. During cross-examination, Ryan's lawyer tries to shift the narrative. Isn't it true that your family has had issues with inheritance disputes? Yes, I admit, but that doesn't justify violence, especially against a pregnant woman, or anyone, for that matter. The courtroom is silent as the prosecutor thanks me. No further questions. Outside, the community's reaction begins to surface. Social media buzzes with opinions ranging from supportive to hostile. Stay strong, Jess. We're with you, one comment raves. Another criticizes, should have kept family matters private. Local news outlets pick up the story, reporters milling outside the courthouse. I hesitate. I decide to speak, stepping forward to address the reporters. This isn't just about me, I say, my voice steady. It's about standing up against violence, no matter where it comes from, even if it's family. As the trial progresses, Ryan's defense weakens. The evidence is undeniable, and the testimony's poignant. The community's support feels like a lifeline, keeping me afloat amidst the storm of public scrutiny. As the final arguments are made, I sit beside Tom, his hand gripping mine tightly. The jury leaves to deliberate, and the weight of their decision looms over us like a heavy cloud. But inside, a fire builds, a mix of fear, anger, and a fierce hope for justice. All rise, the bailiff calls out, and the courtroom echoes with the sound of shuffling feet as the judge re-enters. This is the moment of truth. The tension is palpable as everyone takes their seats. The judge surveys the room, her gaze briefly resting on me before turning to address the court. Defendant Ryan, please stand. Ryan rises, uncertainty replacing the arrogance he once displayed. Having reviewed the case and the evidence presented, I find you guilty of assault, the judge announces. This court sentences you to 3 years of probation and mandatory anger management therapy. You are also ordered to adhere to a permanent restraining order, prohibiting any contact with Jessica. A collective breath is released throughout the courtroom. Some people, like Tom and Uncle Joe, exhale in satisfaction, while others, like Aunt Linda, shake their heads, still conflicted by family ties. Thank you, Your Honor, I say, my voice barely above a whisper, grateful that justice has been served. As the gavel bangs, signaling the end of the trial, Ryan is led away, his head bowed. The family is divided. Some nod in agreement with the verdict, while others still struggle to accept it. Outside the courthouse, Tom pulls me into a tight embrace, the fresh air feeling like a release from the weight we've carried for so long. We did it, Jess. It's over. How do you feel? It's a relief, I admit, but it's also sad. It's not just about winning the case, it's about everything we've lost. The family is torn apart. Yeah, but we stood up for what's right, Tom says, his voice steady. For our family, for our son, he'll grow up knowing that. As we walk towards the car, I glance back at the courthouse. Its stoic bricks a silent witness to our turmoil. Later, at home, we sit together with cups of tea, the baby kicking as if he, too, senses the shift in our lives. Tom pulls out a tiny blue jumper from a bag, a soft smile on his face. I got this for our little champ, he says. He's going to need it, growing up so loved and protected. He really is, I agree, a lighter feeling settling in. Protected, loved, and maybe that's what matters most out of all this. We've given him a safer, healthier start. Yes, and we've learned a lot too, Tom adds. About boundaries, about standing up for ourselves. As the day turns into evening, I reflect on the past months, the legal battle, the family strife, the moments of doubt when I wondered if standing up was worth the personal cost. Do you think things will ever get back to normal with your family? Tom asks, his voice a mix of hope and realism. Maybe not the old normal, I reply thoughtfully, but we'll find a new way forward. Some bridges have been burned, but maybe they needed to be to protect our future. We'll build better ones for him, I say, gesturing to my belly, and for us. As we prepare for bed, the weight of the trial finally lifted. There's a sense of closure. Yet it's mixed with the realization that this is not the end. It's the beginning of a new chapter for our family. Good night, Jess, Tom whispers. Love you. Love you too, Tom, and thanks for everything. As I drift off to sleep, the challenges of the past blend with hopes for the future. Tomorrow will be about moving forward, about joy and anticipation for the new life we're about to welcome. The scars of the ordeal will heal with time, and the strength and lessons we've gained will guide us as we navigate this world together, fortified by our trials. Now, I have a question for you. Do you think pursuing legal action against family members is justified in situations like this, even if it might lead to permanent family rifts? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the story and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Your support helps us keep bringing these stories to life. Hey there, I'm Sarah Johnson, 28 years old, and trying to make a name for myself as a novelist here in Chicago. Before we dive into my story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. So there I was living in a cramped little apartment downtown, juggling my writing career with a part-time barista gig. Glamorous? Not even close. But I was managing. My family has always been a huge part of my life, especially my Aunt Linda and her son, Matt. They're practically my second home. Every weekend, I'd stop by their place. Aunt Linda's been raising Matt on her own for years, and it hasn't been easy. I'd help out where I could, doing chores, keeping Matt company. He's a tough case. At 25, Matt was still bouncing from one job to the next, hanging out with the wrong crowd. I kept nudging him to consider community college, hoping it would give him some direction. You're smart, Matt. Why not give college a shot? I'd tell him. He'd just shrug and mutter, what's the point? It's not going to change anything. Aunt Linda, bless her heart, would always defend him. Matt's just figuring things out, Sarah. He'll come around. I'd hold back from saying what I really thought, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Even my boyfriend, Jake, a paramedic, noticed. We were having dinner one night when he said, Sarah, I've got to be honest, something's off with Matt. The way he looks at you sometimes. It's not right. I brushed him off. He's family, Jake. We stick together, no matter what. Jake just shook his head. Sometimes it's the family you need to watch out for the most. I didn't want to hear it. Matt was my cousin, end of discussion. Sure, he had issues, but who didn't? Little did I know, Jake's words would come back to haunt me. It was a regular Tuesday night. I was curled up on my couch, working on a chapter when my phone rang. It was Matt, and he sounded panicked. Sarah, I need you now. It's an emergency. My heart raced. Matt, what's wrong? Are you okay? Just come over. Please, I can't explain over the phone. Without a second thought, I grabbed my keys. Family first, right? I had no idea that I was driving straight into a nightmare. The drive to Aunt Linda's felt like it took forever. My mind raced with 100 different worst-case scenarios. What kind of trouble had Matt gotten into this time? When I finally pulled up, the house was dark except for a faint light coming from the kitchen. Something felt off, but I shoved the feeling aside. Family needed me. Stepping through that door would turn out to be the worst mistake of my life. I found Matt pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. His eyes were wild, frantic. Matt, what's going on? I asked, my voice shaking. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip tight and desperate. Sarah, thank God. I messed up, big time. What happened? I asked, my stomach sinking. There was this convenience store. It was supposed to be easy money, but the clerk, he tried to play hero. My blood ran cold. Matt, what did you do? I didn't mean to hurt him. It just happened. Now the cops are looking for me. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. We have to call the police, Matt. You need to turn yourself in. His face darkened. No, I need you to cover for me. Tell them I was here all night, watching movies with you. I shook my head. I can't, Matt. That's lying to the police. Come on, Sarah. We're family, you owe me. I don't owe you this, I said firmly. You need help. That's when I saw it, the glint of metal in his hand. A kitchen knife. Matt, put that down, I said, my voice trembling. His eyes went cold, calculating. I can't go to jail, Sarah. I won't. In an instant, he lunged at me. I tried to dodge, but I felt a sharp pain in my arm as the knife cut into my skin. Warm blood soaked through my sleeve. Matt, stop. This isn't you. But the Matt I knew was gone, replaced by someone desperate and dangerous. I bolted, locking myself in the bathroom, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? It's my cousin. He attacked me. He has a knife. Please hurry. I could barely get the words out, my voice trembling. From the other side of the door, I heard Matt banging, his voice filled with rage, completely unrecognizable. Sarah, open this door. You can't do this to me. Sirens began to wail in the distance. The banging suddenly stopped. I waited, my heart pounding, before gathering the courage to open the door. By the time I did, Matt was gone. The next few hours were a blur. Jake rushed to meet me, his face a mix of anger and concern. Sarah, this has to stop. Matt's dangerous. I nodded, wincing as the doctor stitched up the cut on my arm. I know, I just never thought you'd go this far. That's when Aunt Linda stormed into the room, her face streaked with tears. How could you, Sarah? He's your cousin. You should have helped him. Ma'am, a nurse interjected, your son attacked Sarah with a knife. She did the right thing. Aunt Linda's accusations kept coming, filling the room like a heavy fog. And something inside me snapped. Years of making excuses, enabling bad behavior, and always putting family first at my own expense, it all came crashing down. I really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the toxicity that had been festering for years. Enough, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. It's over. All of it. Later that night, sitting in my apartment, the throb of stitches in my arm was a constant reminder of how my world had just been flipped upside down. Hospital discharge papers lay on the coffee table, a stark reminder of what had happened. I picked up my phone, stared at Matt's contact, and hit block. Then I did the same for Aunt Linda. It was time to cut ties. The next day, I headed to the police station. Detective Rodriguez was waiting for me, his expression grim. Miss Johnson, thanks for coming in. We need to talk about Matt. I nodded, bracing myself. What do you need to know? We believe your cousin might be involved in a series of robberies and assaults. Can you tell us exactly what happened that night? I took a deep breath and spilled everything. The panicked call, Matt's confession about the robbery, his desperate plea for a fake alibi, and then the knife. He just snapped. I've never seen him like that before. It was like he was a stranger. Rodriguez leaned forward, his voice steady. You did the right thing coming forward. We'll make sure you're protected. As I left the station, my phone buzzed. It was Jake. How'd it go? It's done. I told them everything. I'm proud of you, Sarah. Want me to come over? I hesitated. Actually, I think I need some time alone to process. That night, I sat at my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Words poured out of me, stories of betrayal, family, and the hard choices we sometimes have to make. It was cathartic, turning my pain into something meaningful. A few days later, I found myself in a community center, surrounded by strangers with haunted eyes, a support group for victims of family violence. A woman named Tanya was speaking, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. My brother. I thought he'd always have my back, but when he raised his hand to me, I knew I had to walk away. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most freeing. Her words hit home. After the meeting, I approached her. Tanya, I'm Sarah. Your story, it really resonated with me. She smiled warmly. First time here? I nodded, rolling up my sleeve to reveal the bandage. My cousin, Tanya gently placed a hand on my shoulder. You're brave for being here. It gets easier, I promise. Weeks passed. I threw myself into my writing and therapy, finding solace in Jake's support. He was always there with a warm hug or a listening ear. I started to feel like I was rebuilding my life, piece by piece. But then one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Sarah, it's Linda. My blood ran cold. Aunt Linda, I told you not to. Please just listen. Matt's in trouble. He needs you. We're family, remember? I gripped the phone tighter, my voice steady. Family doesn't try to stab you, Aunt Linda. I'm done. How can you be so selfish after everything we've done for you? I ended the call, my hands shaking. Jake found me an hour later, curled up on the couch. Hey, what happened? I looked up at him, feeling exhausted. I think I need to get a restraining order. Just as I was beginning to regain some control, Detective Rodriguez called. Miss Johnson, we've got him. Matt was arrested in Nevada for another crime. They're bringing him back to Chicago. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It's over. Not quite, Detective Rodriguez said. We'll need you to testify. Can you do that? I thought about Tanya, the others in that support group, and the story I was writing. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about breaking the cycle, about standing up and saying enough is enough. Yes, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. Yes, I can do that. As I hung up, I realized something. This was the start of something new. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Months flew by like pages in a book. There I was standing in front of a packed bookstore, my novel-cutting ties clutched in my sweaty palms. The publisher's rep gave me a thumbs up from the back of the room. I cleared my throat. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Johnson, and I'm here to read from my debut novel. As I read, I saw heads nodding, tears being wiped away. My story was resonating with people. After the reading, a young woman approached me, her eyes red-rimmed. Your book, it's like you've lived in my shoes. Thank you for writing it. I smiled, a warmth spreading through my chest. You're not alone. That's why I wrote it. Just as I finished signing the last book, my phone buzzed. It was Detective Rodriguez. Miss Johnson, we need you to come down to the station. There's been a development in Matt's case. At the station, Rodriguez dropped a bombshell. We've linked Matt to a cold case, a fatal hit and run from 3 years ago. The victim's family has been waiting for justice. I felt the room spin. Of God, I had no idea. Your testimony is more important than ever now. Are you still willing to take the stand? I nodded, my resolve hardening. Absolutely. As I left the station, my phone rang again. It was Aunt Linda. Sarah, please. I know I've made mistakes, but Matt needs you. He's facing serious time. Just speak to the judge. Tell them he's a good boy who made a mistake. I took a deep breath. Aunt Linda, listen to me. Matt isn't a good boy who made a mistake. He's an adult who's made terrible choices. He attacked me with a knife. He killed someone in a hit and run. I can't lie for him. I won't. But we're family. How can you turn your back on us? Family doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. I'm done. Please don't contact me again. I hung up, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The day of the trial arrived, and as I took the stand, I saw Matt for the first time since the attack. He looked small and defeated, but when our eyes met, I saw a flash of the anger that had always simmered beneath the surface. Miss Johnson, can you tell the court what happened on the night of April 15th? I took a deep breath and told my story, every detail, every fear, every moment of betrayal. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. The verdict came swiftly, 20 years. Weeks later, I was back at the bookstore for another signing when Jake showed up, looking nervous. He approached me and dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring. Sarah, you're the strongest person I know. Will you marry me? Tears welled up in my eyes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. As we celebrated that night, my phone buzzed with an email. I nearly dropped it when I read the subject line. Hollywood's calling. Babe, they want to turn your book into a movie. You did it, Sarah. You turned all that pain into something beautiful. I looked at Jake, then at the ring on my finger. I thought about the movie deal, the success of my book. And then I thought about Matt, sitting in a prison cell, and Aunt Linda, alone in that big house. No, I said, smiling. We did it. I couldn't have done any of this without you, without the support group, without everyone who believed in me. As we toasted to new beginnings, I realized something. The family you choose, the one you build with love and trust, is the one that truly matters. This intense story of betrayal, family loyalty, and personal growth has come to an end. At what point do you think family loyalty should end? Was Sarah right to testify against Matt, or should she have protected him despite his actions? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what you believed was right? How did you handle it? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. Hey there, I'm Jessica, a 30-year-old powerhouse lawyer crushing it in the Big Apple. Life's great now, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. I lost my parents in a tragic car accident when I was just a kid. That's when Grandma Evelyn stepped in and raised me. She's been my rock ever since. It's Christmas time, and I'm heading to her mansion for our annual family get-together. I can't wait to give her the special gift I found, a vintage brooch just like the one her mother used to wear. She's going to love it. I pull up to the mansion and wow, Evelyn's really outdone herself this year. Lights everywhere. A huge wreath on the door, the whole deal. Grabbing my bags and the gift, I take a deep breath and ring the doorbell. Jessica, darling. Come in, come in. Evelyn greets me with a warm hug. Let me look at you. New York is treating you well. I see. I laugh. Can't complain, Grandma. The firm's keeping me busy, but I wouldn't miss this for the world. As I step inside, I see my cousin Tyler sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to his phone. Typical. Yo, Jess. I roll my eyes. Still the chatterbox, I see. Megan, Tyler's sister, comes flying down the stairs. Jessica, oh my God, I love your boots. Where did you get them? Before I can answer, Uncle Robert walks in from the kitchen with drinks in hand. Well, if it isn't the prodigal niece finally gracing us with her presence. I force a smile. Nice to see you too, Uncle Robert. How's the car dealership? He grunts, taking a swig of his drink. It'd be better if people still bought American. Karen, his wife, appears, all smiles and fake cheer. Now, Robert, let's not start. Jessica, honey, it's so good to see you. Can I get you something to drink? I shake my head. I'm good, thanks, Karen. Where should I put my stuff? Evelyn pipes up, oh, I've got you in your old room, dear. Tyler, be a gentleman and help your cousin with her bags. Tyler groans but stands up. As we head upstairs, I can't shake the feeling something's off. In my room, Tyler drops the bags and lingers. So, Jess, how long are you staying this time? I raise an eyebrow. Through New Year's like always. Why? He shrugs, avoiding eye contact. No reason. Just, maybe don't get too comfortable, you know. Before I can ask what that's about, he's out the door. What the hell was that? I start unpacking, my mind racing. There's always been tension with Uncle Robert, but this feels different. I shake it off, focusing on the good stuff. Evelyn's reaction to her gift, catching up with Megan, maybe even chatting with Karen if I can pull her away from Robert for 5 minutes. As I head back downstairs, I overhear Robert and Evelyn whispering. Mom, you can't keep babying her. She's a grown woman, for Christ's sake. That's enough, Robert. Jessica is as much a part of this family as you are, and I won't hear another word about it. I clear my throat as I enter the room, and they both jump. Evelyn recovers first, smiling brightly. There you are, dear. Come sit by me and tell me all about New York. I sit beside her, feeling Robert's glare burning into me. Whatever's going on, this is shaping up to be one hell of a Christmas. Christmas Eve dinner is in full swing, and Evelyn's pulled out all the stops. The dining room looks like something straight out of a Martha Stewart magazine. Crystal glasses, fine china, the works. We're digging into Evelyn's famous honey-glazed ham when Robert decides to run his mouth. So, Jessica, how's that big shot law firm treating you? Still just pushing papers, or have they let you into a real courtroom yet? I take a sip of wine to keep from telling him off. Actually, Uncle Robert, I just won a major corporate fraud case last month. Maybe you've heard of it. Robert's face goes red, but before he can snap back, Evelyn claps her hands. All right, everyone, time for presents. We all gather in the living room as Evelyn starts handing out gifts. She's really gone all out this year. Tyler gets a fancy smartwatch, Megan's squealing over designer shoes, Karen's unwrapping a spa package, and Robert's got what looks like a Rolex. I'm sitting there, grinning, waiting for my turn. Evelyn keeps handing out more gifts to everyone, and I'm sitting there thinking, maybe she's saving mine for last, right? Wrong. She stands up, dusting her hands off, and says, well, that's everything. I blink, confused. Grandma, did you forget something? She turns to me, and for a moment, I don't even recognize her. Her eyes are cold, her voice flat. No gift for you, Jessica. The room falls silent. It feels like I've been slapped. What? Grandma? I don't understand. Is this some kind of joke? Evelyn shakes her head, her face hard as stone. No joke. You don't deserve a gift this year. I look around the room, desperate for someone to speak up. Megan and Tyler stare at the floor, Karen looks like she'd rather sink into the couch. And Robert, he's smirking like he's just won the lottery. I stand, my legs shaking. Evelyn, please. What's going on? What did I do? She won't even meet my eyes. I think it's best if you leave, Jessica. Leave? But it's Christmas Eve. This is my home. Robert stands up, puffing out his chest. You heard her. Time for you to go. Tears well up, my voice cracking. Grandma, please talk to me. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. Just tell me what's wrong. Without turning around, she says, Goodbye, Jessica. I stumble out of the room, grabbing my coat and keys. As I fumble with the front door, I hear Robert's voice behind me, dripping with satisfaction. Merry Christmas, Jessica. Drive safe now. I make it to my car before completely breaking down, tears blurring my vision as I speed out of the driveway. I can barely think straight, barely see the road, but somehow I end up at a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. My hands are shaking so badly I can hardly unlock my phone. I hit speed dial. Mike, it's me. I need you. His voice is groggy, but he's wide awake in seconds. Jess, what's wrong? Are you okay? I spill everything, my voice choked with sobs. Mike listens quietly, then says, Jess, that's messed up. Where are you? I'm coming to get you. No, I'm okay. I don't know what to do. It's like Evelyn's a different person. And Robert, God, you should have seen his face. He looked so satisfied. Mike pauses, his tone serious. Jess, something's not right. This isn't like Evelyn at all. We're going to figure this out, okay? But first, you need to be somewhere safe. Do you have a hotel nearby? I nod, forgetting he can't see me. Yeah, there's a Holiday Inn down the road. I'll get a room. Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start digging. Nobody messes with my best friend and gets away with it. I hang up, still a wreck, but Mike's words spark something in me. Whatever the hell's going on, I'm going to find out. Robert might think he's won, but he has no idea who he's messing with. The next morning, I wake up in a hotel feeling like I've been run over by a truck. My phone's buzzing with messages from Mike. He's already at a local coffee shop, ready to start our investigation. I drag myself out of bed, throw on some clothes, and head out. When I get there, Mike's waiting with a large coffee and a determined look. All right, Jess, let's break this down. When did you first notice something off with Evelyn? I sip my coffee, thinking back. Honestly, not until last night. She was fine when I got there. It's like someone flipped a switch. Mike nods, typing away on his laptop. Okay, so it's recent. What about Robert? Has he been acting differently? He's always been a jerk, but yeah, last night he seemed smug, like he was waiting for something. We spend the next few hours digging into Robert's background. Mike's got some connections at the courthouse, and what we find is shocking. Holy crap, Jess. Your uncle's dealership is sinking. He's got tax liens, defaulted loans, everything. I lean back stunned. So he's broke. But what does that have to do with Evelyn and me? Mike gives me a knowing look. Think about it. If Robert's broke, where's he going to get money? It hits me like a freight train. The inheritance. That son of a... Just then, my phone buzzes. It's Tyler. Yo, Jess, you got a minute? Me and Meg need to talk to you. I meet my cousins at a nearby park, and they both look nervous as hell. Megan speaks first. Jess, we're so sorry about last night. We didn't know what to do. Tyler nods. Yeah, it was messed up. Look, we overheard Dad talking to Mom. He's been feeding Grandma all sorts of lies about you. My blood runs cold. What kind of lies? Megan looks away, ashamed. He told her you've been embezzling from your law firm, that you're facing disbarment. He even showed her fake documents. Tyler jumps in, and that's not all. He convinced Grandma to change her will. He cut you out completely. I'm shaking with anger. That explains the no gift. Evelyn thinks I'm a criminal. Back at the coffee shop, I fill Mike in. He's livid. We need to expose this. Just as we're piecing it all together, my phone rings. It's Karen, and she's whispering. Jessica, I need to see you in person. It's about Robert. We meet at a diner on the outskirts of town. She looks exhausted, like she hasn't slept in days. Jessica, I can't take it anymore. Robert's gone too far. She slides a folder across the table. Inside are fake bank statements, a forged letter from my firm's HR department, even a phony police report. Everything he's been using to frame me as a white-collar criminal. He's been planning this for months, Karen says, her voice trembling. I should have said something sooner, but I was scared. He's not the man I married anymore. I squeeze her hand. It's okay, Karen. You're doing the right thing now. Back with Mike, we start piecing everything together. Robert, desperate for cash, fabricates this entire story to turn Evelyn against me and secure the inheritance for himself. Mike leans back, a glint of determination in his eye. All right, Jess, we've got the evidence. Now we need a plan to expose this bastard and clear your name. I nod, the fire inside me burning hotter. I've got an idea, but we'll need Tyler, Megan, and Karen's help. And maybe a few hidden cameras. As we hash out the details, I can't help but smile. Robert thinks he's won, but he has no idea what's coming. Standing outside Evelyn's mansion, I take a deep breath. Mike's voice crackles in my earpiece. You got this, Jess. I ring the doorbell, and Evelyn answers, her face cold and distant. Jessica, what are you doing here? I've come to apologize, Grandma. Can we talk? As a family? She hesitates, then nods, stepping aside to let me in. Robert is lounging in the living room, looking smug, while Tyler, Megan, and Karen sit nearby, all in on the plan. Well, come to beg for forgiveness. Robert sneers. I stand tall, locking eyes with him. Actually, Uncle Robert, I'm here to clear the air and to show everyone who you really are. His face strains of color as I pull out the folder Karen gave me. What's that? He stammers. Evidence of your lies. Fake documents, forged statements, all part of your scheme to turn Evelyn against me and secure your inheritance. Evelyn's eyes widen. What is she talking about, Robert? Robert jumps up, sputtering. She's lying. You can't believe her. Oh, can it, Dad? Tyler cuts in. We heard you bragging about it. Megan nods, her voice steady. Yeah, you've gone too far this time. Karen stands, her voice shaking but resolute. I can't do this anymore, Robert. I'm leaving you. Robert's face twists with rage. Ungrateful brats. After everything I've done for this family, none of you deserve. He stops mid-sentence, realizing what he's just said. But it's too late. Evelyn steps forward, her eyes blazing. Robert, how could you? My own son. Mom, I can explain. Save it? Evelyn snaps. She turns to me, tears in her eyes. Jessica, I'm so sorry. I should have known better. I hug her tightly. It's okay, Grandma. We're going to be okay. As Robert tries to storm out, karma hits him hard. He slips on a patch of ice in the driveway and goes down, howling in pain. We watch as the ambulance arrives. As they load Robert in, still moaning about his leg and demanding a lawyer, Evelyn makes a call. Yes, I'd like to report a case of elder abuse and fraud. Later, gathered around the Christmas tree, Evelyn hands me a small box. I believe this belongs to you, dear. Inside are the keys to the mansion. I smile, feeling the warmth of family, real family surrounding me. Merry Christmas, everyone, I say, raising a glass. Here's to new beginnings. And that's the end of the story, folks. Now, I've got a question for you. If you were in Evelyn's shoes, would you press charges against Robert, or would you try to keep it in the family and handle it privately? This isn't just about justice. It's about trust and the consequences of betrayal. What would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm dying to hear what you think about this mess. And hey, if you enjoyed this wild ride, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's keep this conversation going. Hey there, I'm Melanie Thompson. I'm 38, a single mom, and the proud mother of a 16-year-old whirlwind named Zoe. She's my whole world, the spark in my everyday. We live in a snug little house in the suburbs. It's not much, but it's ours, filled with love and a million memories. I work as a nurse at the local hospital. The shifts are long, grueling even. 12 hours on my feet, racing from one crisis to the next. But I do it for Zoe. I need to keep a roof over our heads, food on the table. It's not easy, but it's worth every second when I come home to her smile. I was stirring a quick dinner before my night shift when Zoe came crashing through the door, her volleyball bag hitting the floor with a thud. Mom, you're not going to believe what happened at practice today. she exclaimed, her excitement filling the room. I smiled, knowing something good was coming. What's up, sweetie? Did coach finally notice that killer serve you've been working on? Even better, we're going to the state championship. I dropped the spatula in my hand and pulled her into a tight hug. Oh my God, Zoe, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. Moments like that make everything, every exhausting shift, every late night worry, worth it. I've made it my mission to be at every game, balancing life between work and helping her with school. I've become an expert at juggling chemical equations and analyzing Shakespeare, all while managing my own chaos. Then there's Jack, my ex, a charming real estate agent who shows up when it suits him. He's got that knack for swooping in, playing the fun dad, and then disappearing just as fast. Hey kiddo. Jack's voice boomed from the driveway one Saturday afternoon. Ready for our day out? Zoe's face lit up as she ran toward him. Dad, you're early. I forced a smile. Have fun, you two. Don't forget your jacket, Zoe, I called after them. As they drove off, that familiar pang settled in. Jealousy, worry, maybe both. I shook it off, trying to focus on tidying up the house. But it lingered like an unwelcome guest. Later that evening, Sarah, my best friend and fellow nurse, stopped by with a knowing grin and a bottle of wine in hand. Girl, you look like you could use this. I laughed, grateful for the distraction. Am I that obvious? We settled on the porch, and before I knew it, I was spilling my guts about Jack's increasing presence in Zoe's life. I don't know, Sarah. He's been taking her out more often, buying her all these fancy things. I can't compete with that. Sarah rested a hand on my arm. Mel, you're an incredible mom. Zoe knows that. Does she? Lately it feels like she's slipping away. She's always on her phone, talking about how cool her dad is. Just as I said it, Zoe and her best friend Lily burst up the driveway, giggling over something on Lily's phone. Hey, Mrs. T, Lily chirped. Mind if I stay for dinner? Of course not, sweetie. You're always welcome here. As the girls disappeared inside, Sarah gave me a knowing look. See, your house is still the place to be. I nodded, but something still gnawed at me, like the foundation of everything I built was starting to crack. I had no idea just how deep that crack was about to run. My sweet, bright Zoe was slipping away from me, and I didn't even see it coming. It started small, missed curfews, half-finished homework. But now it felt like I was living with a stranger. One night, she stumbled in at 2 a.m., reeking of cigarettes. Zoe, it's 2 in the morning. Where have you been? My voice wavered between anger and fear. Out, Mom. God, can you chill? She shot back, brushing past me like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. The smell of cigarettes clung to her clothes, and my heart sank. Have you been smoking? Zoe, we've talked about this. Whatever. You're not Dad. He lets me live a little. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Jack had been showing up more, bringing gifts, making promises. The next morning, I tried to talk to her, softer this time. Over breakfast, I said, Honey, I'm worried about you. Your grades, the late nights. Maybe if you weren't so controlling, I could actually focus, she snapped, slamming her spoon down. Controlling? I echoed, trying to keep calm. I'm trying to help you. By suffocating me. Dad says you're just stuck in the past, jealous of him. My blood boiled. Your father doesn't. But she was already storming out, slamming the door behind her. That night, I called Jack. What are you telling our daughter about me? Relax, Mel, he said smoothly. I'm just showing her there's more to life than your rules. Rules? You mean basic respect and responsibility? See? This is why she prefers being with me. You're suffocating her, sucking the joy out of her life. I hung up fuming, but I had no idea just how bad things were about to get. A week later, I was served custody papers. Jack was suing for full custody, claiming I was unfit. I laughed at first, thinking no one would believe that, but then came the court date. Sitting there, confident in the life I built for Zoe, my world came crashing down. Mom's always yelling, Zoe said coldly from the stand. She's never there for me. She's too busy with work to care about what I want. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. She's emotionally abusive, she continued. She makes me feel worthless. Tears blurred my vision. Where were these lies coming from? After the hearing, I cornered her in the hallway. So, how could you say those things? You know they're not true. For a brief second, I saw a flicker of the daughter I knew. But then Jack appeared, sliding his arm around Zoe, pulling her close. "It's okay, princess. You did the right thing," he murmured, his voice dripping with reassurance. As they walked away, I overheard him whispering, "Remember, a whole new life is waiting for you. No more rules, no more nagging." The judge's decision had come swiftly, full custody to Jack. Me? I was relegated to supervise visits, a visitor in my own daughter's life. As Zoe packed up her things, the silence between us felt unbearable. Each box she carried out felt like a piece of my heart being ripped away. Finally, I asked the question burning in my chest. Why? Zoe barely looked at me. "You just don't get it, Mom. I need freedom. Dad understands that." And with that, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, echoing through the once noisy, lively house. I sank to the floor, the weight of it all crushing me. That night, Sarah came over, ice cream and tissues in hand. "I don't understand," I sobbed, clutching the spoon. "Where did I go wrong?" "You didn't," Sarah insisted, her arm around me. "Jack's manipulating her. She'll see the truth eventually." But as I glanced into Zoe's empty room, everything untouched except for the hollow space where she used to be, I wasn't so sure. How do you come back from a betrayal like this? How do you forgive your own child for tearing your world apart? I picked up a framed photo from Zoe's desk. It was from last year, Zoe and I, both smiling, carefree. I stared at the image, running my fingers over the glass. "I'll fight for you," I whispered. "Even if you don't want me to." It's been 6 months since Zoe left, and I've thrown myself into work. Double shifts, overtime, anything to fill the silence of the empty house. "Melanie, you can't keep this up," Sarah said one day during our break. "You look exhausted." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just busy." But she was right. The exhaustion wasn't just from work. I needed something more, something to distract me from a hollow ache that never went away. That's when I saw the flyer for the youth center. Volunteering seemed like a good way to fill the void. On my first day there, I met Aisha, a tough kid with walls as high as I used to have. She reminded me so much of Zoe, but I couldn't go there, not yet. "I don't need your help," Aisha snapped the first time I tried to talk to her. I held up my hands, backing off. "Okay, but I'm here if you change your mind." Weeks passed, and slowly Aisha started to open up. One day, during an art session, she broke down, her tough exterior crumbling. "My mom's boyfriend is a jerk," she sobbed. "He treats me like I'm nothing." My heart ached. I wanted to tell her about Zoe, how much I understood the pain of feeling pushed aside, but I held back. This was about Aisha, not me. Meanwhile, life went on, the days blurring into each other. I was restocking supplies at the hospital when my phone buzzed. Lily's name lighting up the screen. "Mrs. Thompson, it's about Zoe." My heart raced. "Is she okay?" I typed back, my fingers shaking. "Not really. She's been hanging out with these sketchy guys in her grades. It's bad." I gripped the phone tighter. "What about Jack? Isn't he doing anything?" "He's never around," Lily replied, followed by a heavy sigh I could almost hear through the text. "And his girlfriend Vanessa, she's awful to Zoe." Every instinct screamed at me to rush to Zoe, to pull her back before she slipped even further away. But I remembered the cold look in her eyes at the custody hearing. The sting of betrayal still lingered. "Thanks for telling me, Lily. Keep an eye on her, okay?" That night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning as thoughts of Zoe filled my mind. Was I doing the right thing by staying away? Or was I just abandoning her, like she thought I had before? The next day at the youth center, Aisha seemed different, quieter, more withdrawn. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice gentle. She shrugged. "Why do you care? You're not my mom." The words hit hard. I wasn't her mom, no, but I cared. "No, I'm not," I said softly. "But I still care." Aisha's tough facade cracked just a little. "My mom's boyfriend hit her last night," she whispered. "She won't leave him." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. That must be scary. "Have you talked to a counselor?" She shook her head. "Would you like me to go with you?" I offered, feeling hope stir as she gave a small nod. Progress. As we walked toward the counselor's office, my phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop. A news alert about Jack. The headline read, "Local realtor under investigation for fraud." I quickly texted Sarah. "Have you seen this?" Her reply came instantly, "Just now." What are you going to do? What could I do? Zoe had made her choice, but the thought of her being alone in the middle of Jack's mess sent a wave of dread through me. Mrs. Thompson. Aisha's voice pulled me back to the present. You coming? I pocketed my phone, right behind you. That evening, I sat in my quiet living room, staring at Zoe's latest school photo. My finger hovered over her contact in my phone. Should I call her? What would I even say? A text from Lily popped up. Zoe's out late again. I'm worried. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to jump in my car and find her. Instead, I typed back. Thanks for letting me know. Keep me posted. As I set the phone down, I noticed a missed call from an unknown number. I played the voicemail and my blood ran cold. Miss Thompson, this is Officer Davis. The voicemail from Officer Davis sent my heart racing. There's been an incident involving your daughter. I rushed to the station, terrified of what awaited me. Zoe had been caught shoplifting with her new friends. As I entered, I saw her hunched in a chair, looking smaller than I remembered. Mom? I cut her off. Not here, Zoe. Let's go. The car ride home was silent. Tension hung between us, thick and unspoken. When we finally got inside, Zoe broke down. I'm sorry, Mom. Everything's falling apart. Dad's never home. Vanessa hates me, and I don't know what to do. I wanted to pull her into my arms, to comfort her like I used to, but the hurt was still too fresh. Zoe, I can't just pretend nothing happened. You lied about me in court. I know, she sobbed. Dad promised me so much, but it was all lies. I took a deep breath, fighting back the storm of emotions. We need help, Zoe. Real, professional help. She nodded, her face a mix of relief and fear. The next day, I found a family counselor. And then the news broke. Jack had been arrested. Fraud, money laundering, the whole sordid mess. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages, but one stood out. It was from Vanessa. Your brat's stuff is on the curb. Come get it, or it's going in the trash. I sighed, grabbing my keys. When I arrived, Zoe was sitting on her suitcase, crying. She kicked me out, Mom. I have nowhere to go. The old me would have caved instantly, rushing to comfort her. But I held my ground. You can stay in the guest room for now, but we're sticking to counseling. And you'll follow the house rules. Understood? Zoe wiped her tears and nodded. Yes, Mom. Weeks passed. Zoe went back to school. I worked my shifts, and we went to counseling together. It wasn't easy. Every session peeled back more layers of hurt. But we were trying. Then came the night that changed everything. I was working a night shift in the ER when the ambulances screamed in. A multi-vehicle pileup on the highway had sent victims flooding in. As I rushed to help, I froze. There, on one of the gurneys, was Zoe. BP dropping. A paramedic shouted. Possible internal bleeding. In that moment, nurse mode kicked in, pushing aside the panic threatening to take over. Hours later, after surgery, I sat by her bedside, holding her hand, willing her to be okay. When Zoe's eyes fluttered open, she whispered, Mom, you're here. Always, I said softly. As Zoe recovered, we began to have real conversations about the pain we had caused each other, the trust that had been shattered. I want to come home, she said one afternoon, her voice steady. For real this time. I squeezed her hand, searching her eyes. It won't be easy. We have a lot to work through. I know, she replied, but I want to try. Months passed, and slowly, we found a new rhythm. Zoe was back home, working hard in school, rebuilding her friendships. I'd been promoted at work and continued volunteering at the youth center, watching Aisha thrive in her first year of college. Life, in its quiet way, was moving forward. One evening, as Zoe and I cooked dinner together, she turned to me, her voice soft. Mom, I know I hurt you. I'm still sorry, but thank you for not giving up on me. I pulled her into a hug, the warmth between us filled with forgiveness and the promise of a stronger bond. We're family, I whispered. We stumble, we fall, but we always find our way back to each other. The story has come to an end, but I have a question for you. If you were in Melanie's shoes, could you forgive your child for betraying you in court and tearing your family apart? Even if they realize their mistake later, would you be able to rebuild that trust? Or would the damage be too severe? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and perspectives might help others facing similar challenges. And if this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm sitting in my sleek New York City apartment, surrounded by half-packed suitcases and travel brochures. Work has been going amazing. I just landed a big promotion at my marketing firm. Now I'm finally treating myself to a well-deserved vacation. Or so I thought. Sarah, honey, can you grab my dry cleaning while you're out? My mom's voice crackles through the phone. I roll my eyes. Mom, I'm in New York, remember? I can't just pop by the cleaners for you. Oh right, she laughs. I keep forgetting how successful my baby girl is now. Classic mom, always forgetting that I have my own life. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but sometimes I feel more like their personal assistant than their daughter. My phone pings. It's a text from my sister Amanda. Hey, can you watch the kids next weekend? Tom and I need a break. I sigh and text back, sorry, Amanda. I've got plans. But you're so good with them. Lily and Max love their Aunt Sarah. Of course they do, probably because I'm the only one who doesn't pawn them off on someone else every chance I get. Just as I'm about to silence my phone, it rings again. This time, it's my younger brother Mike. Yo, Sarah, can I borrow your car next week? Got a big date. Mike, I'm in New York. My car is in storage. Oh yeah. Well, can you rent me one? I'll pay you back. Sure, just like the last 5 times. At 25, you'd think he'd have his act together by now. I flop onto the couch, feeling drained. My best friend Rachel sits next to me, her laptop open to her travel blog. Family at it again, she asks, raising an eyebrow. When aren't they? I groan. Sometimes I think they forget I have my own life. Rachel pats my arm. You've got to start setting some boundaries. You can't keep dropping everything for them. I know. It's just, they're family, you know. Family doesn't mean being a doormat, Sarah. She's right, of course, but old habits die hard. Just as I'm about to respond, my phone rings again. It's Mom. Sarah, honey, I need you to come home right away. It's an emergency. My heart drops. What's wrong? Is everyone okay? We just need you here now. Can you book a flight? Without hesitation, I'm on my laptop, booking the next flight out. I'll be there as soon as I can, Mom. Just hang on. Rachel watches me pack. You sure about this? It's awfully last minute. It's an emergency. I have to go. Little did I know, I was walking right into a trap. When I burst through the front door of my family's house, my heart is pounding. Mom? Dad? Is everyone okay? Silence. I spot Lily and Max playing in the living room, completely oblivious. Aunt Sarah. Lily squeals, running to hug me. Hey, kiddo, I say, distracted. Where's your mom? Max shrugs, not looking up from his toys. They all left. My stomach sinks. Left? What do you mean left? That's when I see it, a note taped to the fridge. As I read it, my blood boils. Dear Sarah, we've gone on a cruise. Watch the kids for 2 weeks. Love, Mom, Dad, Amanda, and Mike. I crumple the note in my fist. You've got to be kidding me. Memories flood my mind. Amanda guilting me into planning her wedding. Mike borrowing money he never repaid. Mom and Dad expecting me to drop everything for their last-minute dinner parties. My phone buzzes. It's Mom. How could you do this to me? I hiss. Oh, Sarah, don't be so dramatic. It's just 2 weeks. I have a job, Mom. I have plans. Family comes first. The kids need you. And what about what I need? Don't be selfish, Sarah. We didn't raise you to be selfish. The call ends, leaving me seething. I look at Lily and Max, feeling torn. It's not their fault, but I can't just let this slide. I open Facebook and my jaw drops. Amanda has posted a selfie on a cruise ship. Child-free vacay, here we come, #blessed. The timestamp? 3 months ago. Next, Mike's post pops up. 2 weeks of free booze. Thanks, sis. My hands shake as I dial Rachel's number. They played me. They played me. I blurt out, my voice cracking. What happened? She asks, concern in her tone. I spill everything, the cruise, the note, the guilt, my family's constant manipulation. I can barely keep my voice steady. Sarah, listen to me, Rachel says, her voice firm. You need to put yourself first for once. They can't keep treating you like this. But the kids are not your responsibility. Your family needs to learn that they can't walk all over you. She's right. I've spent years bending over backwards for them. And for what? What should I do? I ask, feeling lost. Well, Rachel says, a mischievous tone creeping into her voice. You're already packed for a vacation, right? A slow smile spreads across my face. Rachel, you're a genius. I know, now let's plan your great escape. As we scheme, I feel a weight lifting off my shoulders. For once, I'm putting myself first, and it feels damn good. Lily, Max, I call out. How would you like to spend 2 weeks with Mrs. Thompson next door? Their excited cheers seal the deal. It's time for Aunt Sarah to teach the grown-ups a lesson they won't forget. With my heart racing from a mix of anxiety and excitement, I dial Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Thompson, it's Sarah from next door. I have an unusual favor to ask. To my relief, she agrees without hesitation. Of course, dear. Those little ones are always a delight. But are you sure everything's all right? It will be, I say, my voice filled with newfound determination. With the kids taken care of, I booked my flight to London, dipping into my emergency fund. But you know what? This is an emergency of self-respect. I scribble a note for my family. Gone on my own trip. Kids are with Mrs. Thompson. Enjoy your cruise. Sarah. As the plane takes off, I switch off my phone, feeling a rush of liberation. Goodbye, New York. Hello, London. Rachel meets me at Heathrow, grinning from ear to ear. Ready for some revenge tourism? You bet your ass I am, I laugh, linking arms with her as we head into the city. We spend our days exploring every corner of London, posing for silly pictures at Big Ben, stuffing ourselves with fish and chips, and catching a show in the West End. Look at you, Rachel exclaims one evening as we sip cocktails at a rooftop bar. I've never seen you so free. I smile, realizing she's right. For the first time in years, I'm not worried about anyone but myself. Meanwhile, my family's messages pile up in my voicemail. Mom, Sarah Elizabeth, you call us this instant. How could you abandon your niece and nephew like this? Dad, Princess, please, your mother's worried sick. Just let us know you're okay. Amanda, what the hell, Sarah? I trusted you with my kids. You're so selfish. Mike, yo sis, our mom and dad are pretty pissed. Can you come back or something? With each message, I feel a little stronger, a little more sure of myself. One night, as Rachel and I stroll along the Thames, she asks, do you regret it? Coming here? I pause, thinking, you know what? Not even a little bit. For once, I'm putting myself first, and it feels amazing. Good, she nods. Because you deserve this, Sarah. You deserve to be happy. As we continue our walk, I realize something. This trip isn't just about getting back at my family. It's about reclaiming my life, my independence. It's about becoming the Sarah I always wanted to be. Back at the hotel, I check my special email account. Mrs. Thompson has sent an update about the kids. They're happy, healthy, and apparently loving their vacation at her house. I reply thanking her and assuring her I'll be back soon. Then, on a whim, I book us tickets for a day trip to Paris. Because why not? I'm our role. As I fall asleep that night, I think about my family on their cruise. I wonder if they're enjoying themselves or if they're too busy worrying about the mess they've made. Either way, I'm done feeling guilty. I'm done being the family doormat. When I go back, things are going to change. But for now, I've got a date with the Eiffel Tower. I stand in the driveway, suitcase by my side, as my family's minivan pulls up. The tension in the air is thick. Mom is the first to step out, her face a mix of relief and fury. Sarah Elizabeth, where have you been? Do you have any idea? I cut her off. Save it, Mom. I know exactly what you all did. Dad steps forward, his hands raised placatingly. Now, Princess, let's all calm down and talk about this like adults. Oh, now you want to talk like adults? That's rich. Amanda pushes past them, her face red with anger. How could you abandon my children like that? I trusted you. I can't help but laugh. Trusted me? You mean you manipulated me. All of you did. Mike hangs back, looking uncomfortable. Come on, sis. It wasn't that big a deal. Not a big deal. I explode. You lied to me. You took advantage of me again. Mom tries to interject. We didn't lie. We just. Just what, Mom? Conveniently forgot to mention your month-long, pre-planned vacation. Their faces fall as they realize I know everything. How did you find out? Dad asks quietly. Social media exists. Dad, you should try it sometime. Amanda steps forward, her anger melting into desperation. Sarah, please. Tom left me. He said he couldn't be with someone who tricked their own sister. I feel a twinge of sympathy, but push it down. That's not my problem. Amanda. Mike pipes up, yeah, well, just dumped me too. Said I was immature and selfish. Gee, I wonder why, I mutter. Mom and Dad exchange glances. Sarah, honey, Mom begins. We've been getting calls from everyone. Aunt Marge, Uncle Pete, even Pastor Jim. They're all so disappointed in us. Welcome to the club, I say coldly. Dad sighs heavily. We messed up, Princess. We see that now. Can't we just go back to how things were? I shake my head firm. No, we can't. Things are going to change around here. I lay out my new rules. No more last-minute favors. No more guilt trips. No more taking advantage of my kindness. They listen in stunned silence. And one more thing I add. I'm moving to London for a year. My company offered me a position there, and I'm taking it. Mom gasps. But Sarah, what about your family? What about me? Mom, don't I deserve to put myself first for once? As I turn to leave, Amanda grabs my arm. Sarah, please, I need you. The kids need you. I gently remove her hand. You'll figure it out, Amanda. You're stronger than you think. I walk away, feeling lighter than I have in years. As I reach my car, I hear Dad call out, will we still see you? I pause, then turn back. That depends on you. Show me you can respect my boundaries and we'll see. As I drive away, I catch a glimpse of them in my rearview mirror. Mom and Dad holding each other, Amanda wiping away tears, Mike kicking at the ground. Part of me aches for them, but a bigger part knows this is necessary. 6 months later, I'm thriving in London. My job is challenging and rewarding, and I've made amazing friends. Rachel visits often, and we laugh about how far I've come. Back home, things are tough. Amanda is struggling as a single mom. Mike finally had to get a job and move out, and Mom and Dad are dealing with the social fallout of their actions. We talk occasionally, and I can sense they're trying to change. As I sip my tea and look out over the London skyline, I realize something important. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for your family and for yourself is to set boundaries and stick to them. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, you've got to be the hero of your own story. The story's over, folks. Now I've got a question for you. Have you ever had to cut ties with toxic family members? How did it impact your life? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama and revenge tales. Your support keeps these stories coming. Hi, I'm Emily. Life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges at us, and the recent loss of my grandmother was one that still lingers in my heart. She wasn't just a relative. She was my confidant, my biggest cheerleader, and the one who believed in my dreams of becoming a graphic designer when no one else did. Her final gift to me was more than just an inheritance. It was a piece of her unwavering faith in me, wrapped up in the formalities of wills and legal documents. I vividly remember the day at the lawyer's office. The polished oak table seemed colder than ever as the lawyer read the will. I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders, knowing that every penny was a testament to Grandma's love and trust. But my father, Richard, saw it differently. Since marrying Clara a year ago, things at home had changed. Clara was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her presence, not just her smile. She was always on to the next big project, each one more ambitious than the last. But there was something about her, an air of secrecy beneath the charm, that made me uneasy. Emily, you know Clara's been thinking about starting a new business, Dad said one evening, his tone casual, as if he were discussing the weather rather than my future. She has this brilliant idea, and your inheritance could be the perfect seed money. We were in the living room, where traces of Grandma still lingered, her favorite porcelain vase on the mantelpiece, her knitting basket by the sofa. Discussing using my inheritance in such a way in this space, filled with her memories, felt like a violation. I want to use that money for my own designs, Dad. Grandma wanted me to have it for my future, I countered, trying to keep my voice steady. Clara chimed in, her voice smooth as silk. But think of the potential, Emily. It's not just an investment in a business. It's an investment in family. We could all benefit. The way she said family made it sound more like a business deal than a bond of love and trust. I looked between them, feeling the tension rise. I don't know, Clara. I need to think about it. It's a lot to consider. Your grandmother would have wanted you to be practical, Emily, Dad added, his tone shifting, a slight edge creeping in. She was always about the big picture. I couldn't believe he was using Grandma's memory like that. I think she'd want me to be careful, I retorted, my hands clenched in my lap. The conversation stalled, the air thick with unspoken words, and my refusal hanging heavily between us. Clara's smile didn't waver, but her eyes, they hardened just a fraction, enough to let me know this wasn't the end of it. In the weeks that followed, I pored over Grandma's letters to me, each line a reminder of her wisdom. She'd often written about the importance of standing firm in one's beliefs, especially when pressured to compromise. I knew deep down that investing in Clara's business was not what I wanted, nor what Grandma would have wanted me to do blindly. One evening, as I sat reading one of those old letters under the soft glow of a lamp, I realized that my decision was about more than just money. It was about respecting Grandma's legacy. I needed to hold on to the inheritance for the purpose it was intended, for my dreams, not Clara's. I'm not investing the money in the business, Dad, I finally declared one night after dinner. The look on his face was a mix of disappointment and frustration. But I was resolute. Clara's attempts to sway me further only strengthened my resolve. It's yours, Emily. We could have done great things together. Perhaps we could have, but on whose terms? As the days passed, the tension in the house grew palpable. I knew I had made the right decision, even though it came at the cost of familial peace. But as Grandma always said, some prices are worth paying for the sake of one's own path. Emily, let's raise a toast to your grandmother, a remarkable woman whose legacy continues to inspire us all. Richard's voice filled the dining room, his glass raised high. The room, adorned with Grandma's favorite lilies, felt too tight, too staged. Clara stood beside him, her smile practiced, her eyes scanning the room like she was calculating her next move. To Grandma, I echoed, lifting my glass. The clink of glasses felt hollow against the backdrop of my churning thoughts. Tonight, the sleuthing begins, where all modern investigations start, with a laptop and a strong cup of coffee. As the screen glowed in the dim light of my apartment, I typed in Clara's business name, watching as pages of polished PR spin and investor fluff filled the screen. It was all too glossy, too perfect. Jenna, my college friend turned financial analyst, plopped down beside me with her own laptop. Something like that, can you help me look beyond the surface? There's something off about Clara's business proposals. Jenna's fingers flew over her keyboard. Let's dive into the financials. If there's dirt, it's buried in the numbers. We split tasks, me chasing down former business associates and disgruntled partners, while Jenna scrutinized financial reports and investment returns. Hours blurred as we unearthed a troubling pattern. Businesses started, money raised, ventures abruptly shut down. Look at this, Jenna pointed to a series of transactions. Every time one of her companies tanks, she's already pulling capital from the next. It's like a Ponzi scheme, but with startups. I leaned back, the implications spinning in my head. She's using new investor money to cover old debts. Exactly. And look here. Several of these investors are family businesses, including some of your dad's friends. The betrayal stung. Its reach wider than I feared. Clara wasn't just targeting me. She was ensnaring anyone within my father's circle. We need to expose her, Jenna, before she drags more people down with her. Plans formed, a sting operation of sorts. We decided on a family gathering. A casual barbecue, the kind where news spreads as quickly as the fire in the grill. The day was clear, the backyard filled with unsuspecting guests. I spotted Clara holding court among my father's friends, her charm dialed high. With a nod to Jenna, who was ready with documents and her phone for recording, I strode over. Clara, can we talk in private? My voice was steady, belying the storm inside. She smiled, a predator's grin, and led me to the garden, out of immediate earshot but still in view of everyone. What is it, Emily? I know about the businesses, Clara. The failed ventures, the money from new investors used to cover old debts. How many more people need to suffer for your ambitions? Her face hardened, the facade slipping. You're out of your depth, Emily. This is how the world works. People invest, some win, some lose. But they didn't know they were gambling with a stacked deck. Did they? You deceived them. Clara's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Jenna stepped forward, her phone out. "We have proof, Clara, and we're not afraid to use it." The confrontation escalated, voices rising as the tension in the air thickened. Guests began to drift over, drawn by the drama unfolding before them. Clara laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "You think this will stop me? Your father won't believe you over me." But then Richard, who had come over to see what was happening, spoke up, his voice unsure. "Is it true, Clara? Were you lying to us all?" With the crowd's eyes on her, Clara's confidence wavered. "Richard, it's not like that. It's just business." "It's fraud," I corrected her, my voice carrying across the silent onlookers. "And everyone here deserves to know the truth." The fallout was immediate. Conversations ignited, some defending Clara, others shocked and reeling. Richard stood silent, the truth finally cutting through his denial. As the party broke up, the seeds of doubt firmly planted, I realized the battle was far from over. But today, the truth had won a significant victory. At home, the atmosphere was tense. Clara's latest venture crumbled without the influx of missiled investments, leaving her scrambling to salvage her reputation. But the damage was done. The strain on their marriage was palpable, each day widening the rift that the truth had torn open. Amid the chaos, I focused on building the future I had envisioned. One where my creativity and ethics weren't just tools for survival, but foundations for growth. Using my inheritance, I launched my own design firm, specializing in sustainable and innovative design solutions. It was a risk stepping out amid the fallout of Clara's scandal, but it was one I took with determination. The firm quickly gained traction. Projects flowed in, and clients appreciated the transparency and creativity I brought to the table. For the first time in a long while, I felt the true weight of independence, the kind that's carved out of adversity and thrives against the odds. Months passed, and as the firm celebrated its first successful year, I invited family and friends to a small gathering. It wasn't just a celebration of the firm's success, but a testament to resilience and integrity. As guests mingled in the warmly lit room of my new studio, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey. The air was filled with laughter and music, a stark contrast to the last family gathering dominated by confrontation and betrayal. Richard approached, a figure much diminished by his recent experiences. His eyes met mine, and there was a flicker of something, regret, perhaps, or a newfound understanding of the consequences of his choices. "Emily, I am sorry," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was wrong about Clara, about everything." I nodded, acknowledging his apology, but feeling the distance that couldn't be bridged. "Thanks, Dad. I hope we can move forward, maybe not as before, but forward nonetheless." Clara was notably absent, her presence replaced by murmurs of her latest predicaments, more failed ventures, more burned bridges. I felt a twinge of pity, but it was distant, overshadowed by the awareness that she had brought this upon herself. As the evening wound down, I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. The challenges of the past months had sculpted a new version of me, one forged in the fires of betrayal and hardened in the resolve of independence. Turning back to the room filled with the evidence of my new life, I realized this wasn't just a celebration of success. It was a reaffirmation of my path, one chosen with heart and walked with courage. The story of my inheritance and Clara's deceit had begun as a family drama, but ended as a personal triumph. In the end, the legacy wasn't just in the money Grandma left me. It was in the lessons of resilience and integrity, echoing far beyond the immediate consequences of deceit. That wraps up our story. Now I have a question for all of you. If you were in Emily's shoes, would you have used your inheritance to invest in Clara's business venture to maintain peace in the family, or would you have stood your ground as Emily did, even if it meant causing conflict? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Hi, I'm Ashley. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, my wedding day. A day filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a new chapter with the man I loved, David. The sun shone brilliantly in a cloudless sky. The garden was in full bloom, and our friends and family buzzed with excitement. Everything seemed perfect, or so I thought. As I walked down the aisle, radiant in my white gown, I caught sight of my father's stern face. He had never approved of David, always calling him unworthy. But I loved David, and I had hoped my dad would eventually come around. I was wrong. After the ceremony, during the reception, the tension in the air was palpable. Dad's glare at David was a silent challenge. I tried to laugh and chat with our guests, but the unease was undeniable. Then came the toasts. When Dad stood up, his voice was cold and sharp. Instead of speaking about love and happiness, he spoke of disappointment and disapproval. My heart sank. David squeezed my hand under the table, offering silent support, but Dad wasn't finished. He directed his venomous words straight at David, accusing him of being unworthy of me. David stood up, his face flushed. I love Ashley and I will spend my life making her happy. That's more than enough, he declared. Dad snorted. You make her happy. You'll ruin her life. I stood up pleading, Dad, please, this is our day. Before I could finish, Dad's hand flew through the air and struck me across the face. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The physical pain was sharp, but the shock and humiliation cut deeper. My cheek burned as tears blurred my vision. David lunged at Dad, his voice a roar. How dare you touch her? Fists flew as their anger and hurt erupted. Uncles and cousins rushed in to separate them. But the fight spiraled out of control. The sounds of the wedding band were drowned out by shouts and crashing furniture. In the chaos, I felt a pair of arms wrap around me. It was Mom. Her eyes were filled with tears. I'm so sorry, Ashley. The wail of sirens pierced the air. The police, called by Mom, arrived and waded into the fray. They pulled Dad away, his face twisted with fury. He hurled curses as they handcuffed him and led him to the police car. The guests stood in stunned silence. The garden, once a place of celebration, now looked like a battlefield. Broken glass, overturned chairs, the remnants of what should have been a day of love. I looked at David, his lip bloodied, his eyes filled with a mix of rage and sorrow. He came over and hugged me tightly. I'm so sorry, Ashley. This isn't how I wanted our day to be. I leaned into his embrace, feeling the pieces of my heart breaking and rearranging. This was not the wedding day I had dreamed of, but it was a turning point, a moment that made me realize there was no going back. It was time to face the truth about my family, my father, and the life I was choosing with David. As the last of the guests left, whispering words of comfort and confusion, I knew this disaster was just the beginning. It was the start of a journey I never expected, a journey of standing up for myself, for my love, and for the life I deserved. A journey of confronting the past, seeking justice, and finding peace. And it all began on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The morning after my wedding was nothing like I had imagined. There was no joyful breakfast with family, no reminiscing about the beautiful ceremony. Instead, I woke up with a stinging cheek and a heavy heart. David was already up, pacing in our small living room, his face tight with anger and worry. Ashley, we can't just let this go, David said, his voice firm. I nodded, staring at my hands. I know, but what can we do? He's my father. Your father? He assaulted you at your own wedding. That's not a father, that's a bully. I sighed deeply. He was right. Dad's actions were unforgivable. I had always hoped for his approval, but now I realized that dream was over. As we sat at our small kitchen table, David and I began to plan. We couldn't let Dad get away with what he did, not just for us, but for everyone he had hurt with his toxic behavior. I think we should start by talking to the family, I suggested. If we can get them on our side, it'll be harder for him to deny what he did. David agreed. And what about legal action? Should we press charges? I hesitated. I don't know. I want justice. But I don't want this to drag on and consume our lives, I said softly, my voice edged with uncertainty. David looked at me, his eyes filled with understanding but also determination. We'll do whatever you're comfortable with, Ashley, but he can't get away with this. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and meetings. I reached out to my aunts, uncles, and cousins, anyone who had witnessed Dad's outburst. To my surprise, many were more supportive than I expected, sharing their own stories of Dad's abusive behavior. I always knew he had a temper, but I never thought he'd do something like this, my Aunt June said, shaking her head in disbelief. We're with you, Ashley. It's time someone stood up to him. My cousin Mike added, yeah, it's about time. With each conversation, my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about breaking a cycle of abuse that had gone on for far too long. David and I also met with a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Miss Henderson. She listened intently to our story, taking meticulous notes. You have a strong case, especially with the number of witnesses, she said. But be prepared, this will be a public matter, and it could get ugly. A knot of anxiety formed in my stomach, but I nodded. I understand. I can't let him think he can treat people this way without consequences. Miss Henderson gave a small, reassuring smile. Good. I'll start preparing the paperwork. We'll hold him accountable. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of planning and emotional upheaval. David was my rock, supporting me every step of the way. We gathered evidence, spoke to more family members, and worked closely with Ms. Henderson. One evening, as we sat on the couch, exhausted from yet another meeting, David took my hand. Ashley, are you sure about this? I mean, I'll support you no matter what, but this is a big step. I looked into his eyes, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. Unsure, David. I've been pushed around in silence for too long. It's time I stood up for myself. David squeezed my hand. Then I'm with you every step of the way. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I was about to embark on a journey that would change my life forever. But deep down, I knew it was the right thing to do. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my own story. I was ready to write the next chapter. In the days leading up to the confrontation with my father, it felt like living in a suspenseful movie. David and I were neck deep in our plan, gathering evidence of Dad's toxic behavior. It was heart-wrenching and empowering all at once. One sunny afternoon, I met my cousin Lisa at a local coffee shop. She had always been a bit hesitant around family matters. But as I shared my story, she opened up. Ashley, I've seen it too. At family gatherings, he's always so controlling and mean. I remember once he made Tommy cry just because he spilled some juice. Her words added to the growing pile of testimonies. It wasn't just me. Dad's behavior had affected so many of us. Later that week, David and I met with my Uncle Rob, Dad's brother. He had always been quiet, the type to avoid conflict. But this time, he spoke up. He's always been like this, Ashley. I wish I'd done something sooner. Your mom, she suffered a lot because of him. His admission shocked me. Mom had always seemed so strong, so resilient. I had no idea. With each story, the picture became clearer and more disturbing. Dad wasn't just difficult, he was abusive. A bully who had hurt his family for years. And it was time for it to stop. The day of the confrontation arrived. My heart pounded as David and I drove to my parents' house. This was it, the moment I would finally stand up to my father. Dad opened the door, his face a mixture of surprise and suspicion. Ashley, what are you doing here? And you brought him. I took a deep breath. We need to talk, Dad. We sat in the living room, the tension so thick it was hard to breathe. David was beside me, his presence a silent pillar of strength. Dad, for years you've hurt us. Not just me, but Mom, Uncle Rob, Lisa, everyone. It needs to stop. Dad's face turned red with anger. What are you talking about? I've done nothing but take care of this family. I pulled out the written testimonies, the evidence of his behavior. This is what I'm talking about. Your anger, your control, your abuse. He snatched the papers from my hand, skimming them quickly. This is nonsense. They're all ungrateful, just like you. Dad, please, I pleaded. Just read them. Understand the pain you've caused. For a moment, there was silence as he scanned the pages, but then he threw them down. I don't need to take this. I've done nothing wrong. I felt a wave of disappointment and anger. Dad, all we're asking for is an apology, an acknowledgement of what you've done. His voice was icy. You'll get nothing from me. You and your husband should leave. David stood up, placing a hand on my shoulder. We tried, Ashley. We tried. As we walked out, my emotions were a whirlwind. Disappointment, anger, sadness. Above all, there was a newfound determination. Dad's refusal to apologize only solidified my resolve. I was going to see this through, no matter what. The drive back was quiet. I gazed out the window, the passing scenery a blur. This wasn't the end. It was just another step in my journey, a journey that I was more determined than ever to complete. The weeks following my confrontation with Dad were a whirlwind. The story of what he did, bolstered by the testimonies of family members, began to spread. It wasn't just within our family anymore. It was in the community, on social media, everywhere. The man who had always presented himself as respectable and upright was now being seen for what he truly was. One afternoon, as David and I sat in our living room, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Mom. Her voice was hesitant, a stark contrast to her usual strength. "Ashley, your father, he wants to talk to you. He says he's sorry." I felt a jolt of surprise. Dad apologizing. That was something I never expected. "Mom, I don't know. After everything." "Ashley, I understand if you don't want to. I just thought you should know." I thanked her and hung up. David looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern. "What are you going to do?" I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision settle on my chest. "I don't think I can forgive him, David. Not after everything." David nodded, his hand finding mine. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you." A few days later, I received a letter from Dad. It was an apology, or at least his version of one. He wrote about his own upbringing, his regrets, his realization of the pain he had caused. But as I read it, something felt off. It wasn't about me or the pain he had inflicted. It was about him, his feelings, his experiences. I shared the letter with David, who read it carefully. "It's your decision, Ashley. But remember, you don't owe him anything." I knew he was right. This wasn't just about the slap at the wedding or even the years of emotional abuse. It was about a lifetime of toxic behavior, and a letter wasn't going to fix that. The decision was hard, but I knew what I had to do. I wrote back to Dad, telling him that while I acknowledged his apology, I couldn't just forget everything. There would be no reconciliation, no going back to the way things were. The day I sent that letter was the day I felt a true shift within myself. It was like letting go of a heavy burden I had carried for years. I was choosing my own peace, my own happiness. David and I began to rebuild our lives, free from the shadow of Dad's toxicity. We became more involved in our community, finding joy in helping others who had faced similar struggles. One evening, as we sat on our porch watching the sunset, David wrapped his arm around me. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" I leaned into him, feeling a sense of peace and contentment. "Yes, we have. And we did it together." As the sky turned a deep orange, I realized that this was just the beginning. A new chapter in our lives, one where we were no longer defined by the pain of the past, but by the hope of the future. Our journey had been long and difficult, but it had led us to a place of understanding and strength. We had faced the worst and come out stronger for it. And as I sat there with David, I knew that no matter what the future held, we were ready for it. This was our story of overcoming, of justice, and of moving forward. It was a story of empowerment, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And as I looked up at the stars beginning to twinkle in the evening sky, I knew that our story was far from over. It was just beginning. Discussion. Has Ashley's decision to not reconcile with her father, despite his apology, been the right one? Was it a show of strength and self-respect, or could it be seen as an inability to forgive and move on? What would you have done in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinions and perspectives make our community a rich and engaging place. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more content like this to you. Thank you for watching, and we can't wait to read your comments. Hi, I'm Mia. I'm 28 and absolutely killing it in my marketing job, living what I thought was the dream with my husband Jake in our cozy suburban home. Life was good. "Babe, can you help me move this couch? I want to make more space for Sophia." I called out to Jake one Saturday morning. "Sure thing, hun. How's she holding up?" Jake asked as he joined me in the living room. 8 months pregnant and cranky as hell, but I get it. Being kicked out of your place for renovations when you're about to pop isn't fun, I said, laughing. We started rearranging the furniture, trying to make our guest room more comfortable for my sister, who had been staying with us for a couple of weeks. Despite her hormone-fueled meltdowns, it was nice having her around. "So about the baby shower," Jake started, lowering his voice. "Shh, walls have ears, remember?" I whispered, glancing towards the stairs. "But yeah, I've got most of it planned. You sure your dad won't spill the beans?" Jake's face did that thing it always did when we talked about his father, a mix of love and frustration. "Nah, he doesn't even know about it. Safer that way." I nodded, remembering the last time we tried to include Robert in a surprise. Subtlety wasn't exactly his strong suit. "Speaking of your dad," I hesitated, unsure how to approach the subject. "He's not coming over anytime soon, right?" Jake raised an eyebrow. Not that I know of. Why? I shrugged, trying to play it cool. No reason, just, you know how he can be sometimes. Mia, come on, he's not that bad. Jake, the man interrogated our mailman last month because he thought the guy looked suspicious. He's just protective, that's all. Old habits die hard, Jake said, brushing it off. I bit my tongue, holding back a retort. Robert's paranoia had caused more than a few awkward moments since Jake and I got married, but I didn't want to start an argument. Anyway, I changed the subject. I was thinking we could set up the backyard for the shower. String some lights, maybe get one of those cute balloon arches. Jake's face lit up. That sounds great. Sophia will love it. As we continued planning, I couldn't shake the snagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. Robert's unpredictable nature always set me on edge, but I pushed the thought aside, focusing on making the baby shower perfect for my sister. Later, I was in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on a batch of cupcakes for the shower, when the doorbell rang. Jake was out grabbing last-minute supplies, so I wiped my hands on my apron and headed to the door. Coming. I called out, wondering who it could be. When I opened the door, my heart dropped. There stood Robert, Jake's dad, with that stern look he always wore. Mia, he nodded, stepping past me into the house. Thought I'd surprise you kids. Jake around? I stumbled over my words, caught off guard. No, he's out running errands. We weren't expecting you, Robert. That's the point of a surprise, isn't it? He grunted, making himself comfortable on our couch. I forced a smile, my mind racing. Sophia was upstairs resting, and I had to keep Robert from finding out she was here. Can I get you something to drink? I offered, hoping to keep him occupied. Water's fine, he replied, his eyes scanning the room suspiciously. I hurried to the kitchen, but as I filled a glass with water, I heard movement upstairs. Sophia must be up. I rushed back, handing Robert the water, trying to distract him. So, Robert, how's retirement treating you? He took a sip, his eyes still darting around. Fine. Neighborhood's going to hell, though. Seen some sketchy characters lurking around lately. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Classic Robert, always on high alert. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about, I said calmly. Suddenly, the back door creaked open. My heart raced. Sophia must have stepped outside for some air. Before I could react, Robert was on his feet. Did you hear that? He whispered, his body tense. It's probably just the wind, I said quickly, but Robert was already moving toward the backyard. Followed him, panic rising in my chest. Robert, wait. I called, but he was already at the back door, peering out. I saw his body stiffen as he spotted a figure in the yard, Sophia, in her flowing maternity dress, her back to us. Mia, stay back, Robert growled. Before I could stop him, he burst through the door. Everything happened so fast. Robert charged across the lawn, his years of police training kicking in. Sophia turned, her eyes wide with surprise and fear. Robert, no, I screamed, but it was too late. He tackled Sophia with full force, sending them both crashing to the ground. I heard Sophia cry out in pain as she hit the grass, Robert's weight crushing down on her pregnant belly. I ran towards them, my heart pounding. Get off her! I yelled, pulling at Robert's shoulders. He looked up at me, confusion replacing the determination on his face. Mia, what? It's Sophia, you idiot. I shoved him off my sister and knelt beside her. She was curled up on her side, tears streaming down her face, her hands clutching her stomach. Oh God, Sophia, are you okay? I asked, my voice shaking. She whimpered, her body trembling. I turned on Robert, fury overtaking my fear. What the hell is wrong with you? Robert stood there, his mouth agape, finally realizing what he'd done. I thought she was an intruder. I didn't know. Shut up, I snapped, turning back to Sophia. We need to get you to the hospital now. I helped Sophia to her feet, supporting her weight. Call an ambulance, I ordered, my voice cold. Robert nodded dumbly, pulling out his phone. As I looked at my sister's pain-stricken face, a mix of fear and rage boiled inside me. This was supposed to be a happy day, a celebration. Instead, thanks to Robert's reckless behavior, we were heading to the emergency room, praying that both Sophia and her baby would be okay. We burst through the emergency room doors, doctors and nurses swarming around us. She's 34 weeks pregnant, tackled to the ground, I explained, my voice distant and unfamiliar. They whisked Sophia away, leaving me standing there, feeling helpless and terrified. I paced the waiting room, my mind racing. Where was Jake? I had left him a frantic voicemail, but he hadn't called back yet. Suddenly, I heard a commotion at the entrance. It was Robert trying to push his way past security. "I'm family," he was shouting. "Let me through." My fury, simmering beneath the surface, boiled over. I stormed over to him. "You," I began, my voice shaking with anger. "You have no right to be here. Look what you've done." Robert's face hardened. "Now listen here, Mia. I was trying to protect." "Protect?" I laughed bitterly. "You could have killed my sister and her baby. All because you can't control your paranoid impulses." "I'm a trained officer," he started, but I cut him off. "You're a menace. This isn't the first time your training has caused problems, is it?" Robert's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. Just then, Jake came running in, out of breath. "Mia, what happened? Is Sophia okay?" I turned to my husband, tears finally spilling over. "Your father," I spat, "tackled Sophia in our backyard. She's in emergency surgery right now." Jake's face went pale. He looked from me to his father, confusion and disbelief written all over his face. "Dad," he asked weakly, "is this true?" Robert straightened, his jaw set. "Son, I thought she was an intruder. I was trying to protect your home." Jake ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. "But Sophia, how could you not recognize her?" "It all happened so fast," Robert muttered, not meeting Jake's eyes. A doctor approached us then, her face serious. "Family of Sophia Davis." "Yes," I said quickly, stepping forward. "I'm her sister. How is she?" The doctor took a deep breath. "We had to perform an emergency C-section. The baby is premature but stable. Sophia lost a lot of blood, and there was internal damage from the incident. She's in recovery now, but she has a long road ahead of her." I felt my knees go weak with relief and residual fear. Jake caught me, holding me up. "Can we see them?" Jake asked. The doctor nodded. "In a little while. I'll have a nurse come get you." As she walked away, I turned to Jake, my voice low and intense. "What aren't you telling me about your father?" Jake's eyes darted to Robert, who stood awkwardly to the side. "Mia, this isn't the time." "No," I insisted. "I want to know. This isn't the first time he's done something like this, is it?" Jake sighed heavily, defeat in his eyes. "There have been incidents in the past. Nothing this serious." But what?" I pressed. Jake sighed heavily. "Dad's always had a bit of a hair trigger. There were a few complaints when he was on the force, and after he retired, well, there was an incident with a neighbor. And then, at my cousin's wedding." I stared at him in disbelief. "And you never thought to tell me any of this?" "I didn't think it would ever be an issue," Jake said weakly. "I'm so sorry, Mia. I should've." A nurse interrupted us. "You can see Sophia and the baby now." As we followed her, I shot one last look at Robert. "Stay away from my family," I warned. "This isn't over." Entering Sophia's room, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. Seeing her so pale, hooked up to machines, and her tiny daughter in the incubator nearby, I felt a new resolve harden within me. This would never happen again. The weeks following Sophia's emergency C-section were a whirlwind of hospital visits, legal consultations, and tense conversations with Jake. I was determined to press charges against Robert, despite Jake's initial reluctance. "Mia, please," Jake pleaded one night. "He's my father. Can't we just—" "Just what?" I snapped. "Pretend this never happened." "Your father could have killed Sophia and the baby. This isn't something we can sweep under the rug." Jake sighed. "I know. It's just he's family. Sophia's family too," I reminded him. "And she's the one lying in a hospital bed." Finally, Jake nodded. "You're right, we have to do this." The investigation into Robert's assault on Sophia uncovered a disturbing pattern of aggressive behavior. There were complaints from Robert's time on the force, incidents with neighbors, and even a restraining order from a former colleague. As the evidence piled up, I noticed a shift in Jake. He stood taller, spoke more firmly when we met with the prosecutor, and insisted on pursuing the case to the fullest extent of the law. At Robert's sentencing, he stood before the judge, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen him. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, "Mr. Thompson's actions demonstrate a clear pattern of aggressive behavior that poses a danger to society. We asked for the maximum sentence. Robert's lawyer argued for leniency, citing his age and years of service. But the judge wasn't swayed. Mr. Thompson, the judge said sternly, your background as a police officer makes your actions even more egregious. You, of all people, should know better. In the end, Robert was sentenced to 200 hours of community service and mandatory anger management classes. He avoided jail time, but the judge made it clear that any future incidents would result in severe consequences. As we left the courthouse, Jake turned to his father. Dad, I think it's best if we don't see each other for a while. You need to get help. Robert opened his mouth to argue but stopped. For once, he seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. He nodded silently and walked away. 6 months later, our backyard was filled with laughter and the soft coos of a baby. We were finally having that baby shower for Sophia and little Emma, who had grown into a healthy, chubby-cheeked bundle of joy. To new beginnings, Jake said, raising his glass in a toast. Sophia smiled, bouncing Emma on her knee. And to family, the ones who stick by you, no matter what. I looked around at the faces of our friends and family, feeling warmth spread through my chest. We had been through hell, but we come out stronger. Just then, my phone buzzed with a news alert. I glanced at it and let out a low whistle. What is it? Jake asked. Your dad, I said, showing him the screen. Apparently, he got into an altercation at his anger management class. He's facing serious charges this time. Jake shook his head, a mix of sadness and resignation on his face. I guess some people never change. But we did, I said, squeezing his hand. We're better for it. Now that the story's over, let me ask you. If you were Jake, caught between your spouse and your parent in a situation like this, how would you handle it? Would you side with your partner immediately or try to defend your parent? And what if you knew about your parents' history of aggressive behavior? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help someone facing a similar dilemma. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. And for more stories about complex family dynamics and overcoming toxic relationships, subscribe to our channel. Your support helps bring these important stories to light.